I'm the Midnight Storyteller, here to keep you company through the quiet hours. Many of you listen to these stories to fall asleep, and I'm honored to guide you there. And before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the stories alive. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it on your side of the night? Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. Ethan should have questioned why the rent was so cheap. The listing had been vague. Quiet apartment, safe, no pets. He hadn't asked for details. All he knew was that it was available and within his budget. The landlord, a pale man with a dull stare, barely spoke as he handed over the key. "Just one rule," he muttered. "Don't move things around too much." Ethan had blinked at him, confused. What the hell did that mean? But he was too tired to argue. His first night in the apartment was uneventful, but something felt off. The air inside was stale, as if it had been sealed for years. The walls were too thin. He could hear faint murmurs, a soft shuffling sound, but there were no signs of neighbors. And every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., the ceiling lights flickered once, a rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat. The first real sign that something was wrong came when he tried to order an Uber. His address didn't exist. On the app, the map showed a blank space where his building should be. No streets, no markers, just empty void. He tried a food delivery service. Error. A chill ran down his spine. He went outside, looked up at the apartment complex. It was real. He touched the bricks. Real. But according to every app, his home was nowhere. The next morning, he checked his mailbox. It was empty. A stack of unopened packages addressed to him sat outside his door. Every single one was marked "Return to Sender." Ethan picked one up, hands clammy. It was from his mother. He hadn't even known she sent him anything. Inside, his stomach twisted. At first, he chalked it up to bad luck, bureaucratic mistakes, glitches. But then, his phone started acting up. Whenever he pointed the camera down the hallway, the screen distorted. Shadows stretched unnaturally. Shapes loomed where nothing should be. One night, he tested it. He lifted his phone, recording the hallway. Nothing unusual. But when he played the video back, something was there. A tall, dark shape standing just outside his door. He spun, heart pounding. The hallway was empty. The next morning, Ethan went to the landlord's office. He didn't even knock, just stormed in and slapped his lease onto the desk. "My apartment," he said, voice shaking, "doesn't exist in your records." The landlord didn't even look at the paper, his face drained of color. "If you leave now," the man said quietly, "you might still be able to." Ethan felt the world tilt slightly beneath him. "What does that mean?" The landlord hesitated, then whispered, "They haven't finished erasing you yet." Ethan's breath caught. Who hasn't? But the landlord only looked away. That night, Ethan knocked on his neighbor's door. The peephole darkened. A long silence followed. Then the door creaked open an inch. An older woman peeked out. Her eyes were wide, bloodshot. "I need to ask you something," Ethan said. "Have you ever seen me come in or out of the building?" Her face twisted with fear. She looked over his shoulder, then back at him. "No," she whispered. "Not once." The door slammed shut. Ethan staggered back, his breath coming fast. That wasn't possible. He had moved in days ago. Or had he? He dug into his pockets, searching for proof of his life before the apartment. His phone, his ID, his bank cards. Everything still had his name, his information. So why did it feel fake? Then the lights flickered. Ethan rushed inside his apartment, locking the door. He tried calling a friend. The line rang and rang until the ringing distorted, stretching into a long, garbled noise. He hung up, shaking. His gaze drifted to the bathroom mirror. His reflection stared back. Then it blinked, out of sync. His breath caught. He lifted a hand. The reflection copied him, but just a fraction of a second too late. Ethan backed away. The mirror was wrong. The thing inside it was not him. A crack split across the glass. His reflection didn't move. He had to leave. Now. He grabbed his things and sprinted for the door, but when he twisted the knob, it wouldn't budge. The deadbolt was unlocked. The door wasn't stuck. It just wouldn't open. Panicked, he pounded against it. He screamed for help. The building swallowed the noise. His phone, he could text someone, but when he opened his messages, the text bubbles were empty. No sent messages, no contacts. His call log had been wiped clean. A deep, rhythmic flicker washed through the apartment. 3:12 a.m. Ethan turned slowly. The mirror had splintered wider, but his reflection was still whole. It was watching him, and then it smiled. The crack spread, and the glass began to pull inward. Ethan stumbled forward, unable to stop himself. The reflection lifted a hand, this time first. The pull increased. His feet lost contact with the floor. As the last of him vanished into the mirror, the ceiling light flickered twice. Then the room was empty. A week later, a new tenant arrived. The realtor walked them through the empty unit. No previous tenant, the newcomer asked. The realtor hesitated. Not on record, no. The new tenant glanced at the bathroom mirror. It had been replaced. But for just a moment, so fast they barely noticed, their reflection blinked. The end. Dana woke to whispers outside her window. She sat up, pulse hammering. The house was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the kitchen clock down the hall. Her bedroom curtains fluttered slightly, though the windows were shut tight. She listened, just the wind. Then a voice, soft, rustling. Isn't she ready yet? Dana swung her legs out of bed, barely breathing. She checked the alarm clock, 3:14 a.m. With slow, deliberate movements, she tiptoed down the hall, past the half-open door of her son's room. Max was curled under his covers, breathing steadily. His Spider-Man nightlight cast long shadows across the walls. Dana forced herself to the front door. She grasped the lock, twisting it gently. Locked, but when she pulled, the door swung open. A blast of night air rushed in. Dana stepped back, heart slamming against her ribs. The street was empty. The houses opposite hers, neat and uniform, stood in eerie silence. Not a single porch light was on. She closed the door, bolted it, and checked it 3 times before returning to bed. But sleep wouldn't come. The next morning, as she stood at the kitchen counter making coffee, Max padded in, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy," he said. The man came back. Dana's hand froze over the sugar jar. "What?" "The man who tells stories," Max said, climbing onto a chair. He swung his legs lazily, as if this was nothing. He sat on my bed again. He said he used to live here. A cold weight settled in Dana's stomach. "Max, when did this happen?" "Last night." He frowned. "You saw him, right? You left the door open." Dana gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. "No, Max," she said. "I locked it." The neighborhood had seemed perfect. When she moved in a week ago, everyone on Chesterfield Street had welcomed her like an old friend. "New here?" a woman named Janet had asked, handing over a pie before Dana even had a chance to introduce herself. "Feels like we already know you." Dana had laughed politely, chalking it up to small-town friendliness. But something had been off, like the children. Every fridge magnet, every framed photo in every house she visited, it was always the same kids, smiling, dressed in tidy little outfits. Dana had scrolled through the neighborhood's Facebook group and seen years' worth of pictures of these exact same children. They never seemed to age. Now, standing in her kitchen with her son's words repeating in her mind, Dana made a decision. She was getting out. She started packing that afternoon, shoving clothes and toiletries into suitcases with frantic energy. But when she went to load them into the car, she froze. The trunk was empty. The bags were back inside, as if she had never packed at all. Dana stood in the driveway, trembling. A voice called from the sidewalk. "You must be so busy." It was Janet, waving cheerily from her picket fence. Dana tried to keep her voice even. "Actually, we're thinking of taking a little trip." Janet's smile didn't falter. "Oh, that's lovely. Where will you go this time?" Dana's breath hitched. "What do you mean this time?" Janet tilted her head, watching her with an almost maternal affection. "That's what you said last time, too." Dana turned and slammed the trunk shut. She ran inside, locking the door. Her hands were shaking. That night she went through old boxes, looking for proof, anything to anchor her in reality. And then she found the photo, a framed picture from last year's neighborhood block party. Dana stood in the center of the group, laughing, wearing a sunflower yellow dress. She had never owned that dress. Her stomach clenched. She turned to another frame, a Christmas photo. There she was again, standing by a tree she had never decorated. And in the background, grinning too wide, was Max, except he looked just a little too perfect. A knock at the door made her flinch, slow, rhythmic. She reached for her phone, but her contact list was empty. The knocking came again. Dana crept to the peephole. Outside, half the neighborhood was standing in the street. They weren't moving, just waiting, watching. She backed away from the door, heart in her throat. She turned and saw Max standing in the hallway, but something was wrong. His posture, the way his hands hung at his sides, unnaturally still. He smiled. It was too wide. "Where are we going, Mom?" Dana gasped, stepping back. "Max," he just blinked. "We have to go," he said, voice perfectly even. Too even. "You wanted to leave, right?" Dana's mind spun. She turned toward his bedroom. The door was open. The bed was empty. The real Max was gone. This wasn't her son. This was something else. Dana's pulse roared in her ears. She had to run. She grabbed her car keys, fingers slick with sweat. The thing that looked like Max followed, watching her carefully, curiously. She flung the door open and sprinted to the car. She barely noticed the neighbors closing in, their eyes expectant. She threw herself into the driver's seat, hands shaking as she turned the key. A figure stepped into the headlights. Dana's breath left her in a ragged sob. It was Max, her real son. His pajamas were dirty, his hair tousled, his eyes wide and pleading. "Mom," he was crying, "Mom, it's me." Dana's fingers clenched around the wheel. Behind her, the thing in the passenger seat sat perfectly still. Then, softly, "You should go," it whispered. Dana swallowed hard. Her son, her real son, took a trembling step forward. "Please," he sobbed. "Mom, it's me." Dana looked at the replica beside her and smiled. "Where are we going, Mom?" She felt the neighborhood watching, waiting. Her headlights flickered. Outside, Max shivered in the cold. Inside, Max sat beside her. One of them was real, one wasn't. Her foot hovered over the gas pedal. The street lights buzzed. She had to choose. She had to choose. Somewhere in the silence, the neighborhood whispered, "Isn't she ready yet?" The end. arrived at 3:33 a.m. No subject, no sender, just a single sentence. You are not supposed to watch this. Below, a download link. Ethan stared at it, his fingers hovering over his keyboard. As a YouTuber who investigated cursed media, he had received cryptic messages before. Most were hoaxes, badly edited clips meant to spook him. But something about this one, he copied the link and ran it through a few online checkers. No metadata, no source. A direct download. The file was named VHS001.mp4. Ethan hesitated, then curiosity won. He clicked download. The footage was grainy, washed out in a dull green tint. It had the jittery, unstable motion of an old VHS recording. No music, no narration, just the distant hum of static. The camera moved through an abandoned house. It panned across a narrow, peeling hallway, an empty living room, an unmade bed, sheets tangled. Nothing overtly terrifying, but something felt off. Ethan frowned. The shadows in the room shifted, not normally, unnaturally. Whenever the camera moved, the shadows lagged a half-second behind, like they were reacting, like they were watching. His skin prickled. Then, at the 5-minute mark, the cameraman turned toward a dusty window. And in the reflection, Ethan saw himself, his own face, watching from behind the camera. His breath hitched. The video paused on its own. For a second, nothing happened. Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. Then, his reflection in the monitor blinked, a second too late. Ethan jerked backward. His hand flew to the mouse, scrambling to close the video. The screen froze. Then, the whispering began. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. A garbled voice, glitching in and out. Keep watching. Ethan yanked off his headphones. The whispering didn't stop. It was still inside his head. His computer crashed. The screen locked, frozen on the paused video. Then, his phone screen lit up. The same footage was playing. His tablet, his TV, even his smartwatch. Every screen in his apartment playing the video in sync. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. He lunged for the power button. Nothing. The whispers grew louder. He snatched up his phone, desperate to delete the file. But when he reached his storage folder, the file had duplicated itself. Not once, not twice, dozens of times. Then the lights in his apartment flickered. His desk lamp went dark for half a second. When it came back, his chair was facing the opposite direction. His bookshelf, half the books were gone, like a piece of reality had been erased. Ethan's breath came in short, panicked gasps. His computer screen flickered. The video had resumed on its own. The cameraman was at the end of the hallway now, facing a closed door. The handle twisted, a creaking sound echoed, not from the video, but from inside Ethan's apartment. Right behind him, he spun around. But the air felt wrong. His skin prickled. The room was silent, but something had shifted. He turned back to the monitor. His stomach dropped. The reflection in the window had changed. The person in the video was no longer holding the camera. The camera was on the floor, tilted upward, filming something unseen. Filming Ethan. The whispering stopped. A heavy, suffocating silence followed. On screen, the door in the video swung open. A figure stepped through. Not fast, not sudden, slow, deliberate. It moved with the certainty of something that knew it had already won. Ethan's fingers dug into his desk. He felt watched. The figure stepped closer. The camera in the footage tilted downward, dropping to the floor. All Ethan saw were feet stepping forward. And then black screen. For 5 seconds there was nothing. Then the final whisper, "Now it's your turn." Ethan sat frozen, staring at his dark screen. Then his monitor flickered back to life, not showing the video anymore, showing his own webcam feed. His back was turned in the footage. His chair faced his bed. He wasn't moving, but something behind him was. Ethan swallowed a raw, broken sound. He turned in his chair. His room was empty. But it felt different now, a glitch in reality. His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned back to the screen. The webcam feed had changed. It was now showing a different laptop, a different room, a different person, a new viewer. Someone else had just received the email, and before Ethan could move, his screen cut to black. At that same moment, somewhere in the world, another email was sent. Another night owl, another curiosity-driven click, another victim. The subject line remained the same. You are not supposed to watch this. But by the time they read it, it was already too late. The end. Lena noticed the door on a Wednesday. She was sure it hadn't been there the day before. She and Jake had spent the last week unpacking, setting up the fixer-upper they had bought together. They'd planned every inch of it, arguing playfully over which rooms would be painted which colors, which walls to knock down. And yet here it was, a door in the upstairs hallway, a door she knew hadn't been there. Jake, she called, pressing her palm against the cool wood. It was old, with flaking white paint and a tarnished brass knob. Yeah, he was downstairs hammering something. When did we get a door here? Silence. Then, what are you talking about? She frowned. The door in the hallway. Jake came bounding up the stairs, wiping dust from his hands. He looked at her, then at the door, then back at her again. Babe, it's always been here. Her stomach turned. No, it hasn't. Yes, it has. He smiled, but there was something wrong about it. Like he was humoring her, like she was the one who had forgotten. Lena stepped back. You're messing with me. Why would I? She didn't have an answer. The next morning, she found baby clothes in the laundry. She stood over the washing machine, heart pounding. Tiny socks, a onesie with a cartoon giraffe, a bib that read Mommy's Little Sunshine in cheerful yellow letters. Her hands shook as she lifted them. Jake, she called, her voice tight. He wandered in, rubbing his eyes. What's up? She held up the onesie. What the hell is this? Jake blinked at it, then at her, confused. Lena, what do you mean? She clenched her jaw. We don't have a baby, Jake. His expression flickered, just for a second, something dark and unreadable. Then, just as quickly, his face softened. Babe, he stepped closer. You're really tired. Maybe you should get some rest. She felt her breath catch. Not what are you talking about? Not I have no idea where that came from. Just rest, as if she were the problem. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house. It settled differently than before. The walls seemed closer, the air thicker, and then, softly, barely a whisper, she heard it. A baby crying. Lena sat up so fast her vision swam. Jake, she hissed, shaking his shoulder. Jake, do you hear that? He groaned and turned away from her. Go to sleep, Lena. The sound came again, faint but insistent, from inside the locked room. She threw back the covers and got out of bed, heart hammering. Slowly she crept into the hallway. The door stood ajar. It had been locked. She was sure of it. The crying stopped. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to her to go back to bed, to pretend she hadn't heard anything, but her feet moved forward anyway. She pushed the door open. Inside was a nursery, a small, dimly lit room with soft yellow walls, a white crib, a rocking chair, the faint smell of baby powder. Lena's breath came in short, shallow gasps. She backed away. But then she saw them. The photographs, framed pictures along the wall, pictures of her, smiling, holding a baby she had never given birth to. She showed them to Jake in the morning, expecting something, denial, shock, anything. Instead, he only looked at her with concern, brow furrowed. "Babe, of course you have pictures with her." Lena felt the room tilt sideways. "Who?" Jake smiled softly. "Our daughter." Her hands went numb. She dropped the frames, glass shattering against the floor. "Stop it, Lena, stop it." She was shaking. Her throat felt tight. Jake didn't yell back. He didn't even look annoyed. He only took a step forward and cupped her face in his hands, voice calm, too calm. "I think you need to sit down." She jerked away from him. "Where is she, Jake?" He hesitated. That was all it took. She ran. The neighbors looked at her strangely when she came pounding on their doors. They spoke to her like one would speak to a child. "She's growing up so fast," Mrs. Raines murmured. "She loves her mother so much." Mr. Kemp smiled. Lena felt her breath quicken. "Who?" They didn't answer. They just turned their gazes away. That was the moment she knew. She had to leave. That night she packed a bag. She grabbed her keys, her wallet, her phone. Jake was in the shower. She had a window, but as she reached the front door, she heard it. A sound that stopped her cold. The soft, fragile whimper of a baby. From upstairs, from inside the nursery. Lena squeezed her eyes shut. "No, it's not real, I'm leaving." The crying grew louder. Her feet betrayed her. Before she could stop herself, she was walking up the stairs. The nursery door was wide open. Inside, the crib rocked gently, as if someone had just stepped away from it. A pile of soft blankets sat inside. Something shifted beneath them. Lena felt bile rise in her throat. Leave, run, don't look. But she had to. She reached out, trembling fingers grasping the edge of the blanket. Jake's voice came from the doorway. "Go ahead," he said, eyes dark. "Pick her up. She's been waiting for you." Lena looked at him. His face was expressionless. She turned back to the crib. The blanket twitched. Something small, something with tiny fingers began pushing up from underneath. A whimper, a coo, a giggle. Lena let out a choked sob. Jake's voice was gentle. "Go on, babe. She needs her mother." The blanket began to slide back. Lena opened her mouth to scream. The light flickered, and the door swung shut. The end. Ethan checked the time. 2:43 a.m. Almost done for the night. He debated calling it quits. His eyes burned from exhaustion and the roads had grown quiet. But then the app pinged. One last ride. The pickup was in a quiet part of the city, just outside an old building with flickering neon signs. He pulled up to the curb, scanning for movement. The street was deserted, save for a single figure standing beneath a broken streetlight. A woman. She was tall, wearing a long black coat that nearly touched the ground. Her face was obscured by the hood, but she stepped forward smoothly, opening the back door without hesitation. Ethan cleared his throat. Heading to Maplewood Apartments." She nodded. Her silence made him uneasy. Most passengers at this hour were either drunk, talkative, or both. She was neither. He started driving, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. She wasn't blinking. He tried small talk. "Late night, huh?" No response. "You from around here?" Nothing. The silence stretched, pressing against his ears. The only sound was the faint hum of the tires against the road. He adjusted the mirror again. That's when he noticed it. Her reflection was wrong. It wasn't delayed, like in a lagging video, but off by a fraction of a second. almost like she was slightly out of sync with the world. A cold shiver ran through him. He swallowed hard and focused on the road, just a weird trick of exhaustion, that's all. At a red light, curiosity got the better of him. He turned his head, just a quick glance over his shoulder. The back seat was empty. His breath caught in his throat. His skin went ice cold. He whipped his head forward and stared at the rearview mirror. She was still there, sitting in the back seat, unmoving. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The light turned green, but he didn't move. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Slowly he turned his head again, empty. He snapped his gaze back to the mirror. She was smiling, a slow, deliberate curve of the lips, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. The horn blare from the car behind him shattered the moment. He slammed the gas and took off down the road. He didn't dare look at the mirror again. His phone buzzed. He risked a glance at the rideshare app. The trip was still active. The app still showed the passenger in the back seat, but she wasn't there. His screen flickered. The estimated time remaining jumped up and down erratically. At one point, it showed ski minutes to destination. His breath came in short gasps. The silence in the car felt heavy, thick, suffocating. Then a whisper, soft, almost playful. "You saw me." Ethan's whole body locked up. That wasn't in his head. That was real. His hands shook as he gripped the wheel. The streetlights blurred past. He didn't know where he was anymore. The GPS had rerouted itself to somewhere unfamiliar. Finally, he reached Maplewood Apartments. He hit end ride on the app. Nothing happened. He tapped the screen again. The button flickered, then disappeared entirely. The drop-off location on the map shifted, now pointing somewhere deeper into the city. The ride wasn't over. His throat tightened. No, no, no. Something moved in the mirror. His eyes flicked up, and there she was, closer. No longer sitting at the far side of the back seat. She was right behind him. He jumped, twisting around. The seat was empty. His fingers scrambled for the phone. He force-closed the app, shut off his phone, threw it onto the passenger seat. Silence. He squeezed his eyes shut, gripping the wheel. When he opened them again, the ride was gone. Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds of his tiny apartment. Ethan hadn't slept. Instead, he sat at his desk, his laptop open, reviewing the dashcam footage. He watched himself pull up to the pickup location, watched the woman enter. As he drove, she began to change. Her outlines softened, her edges blurring. Frame by frame, she grew transparent. By the halfway point of the drive, her features were gone. A faint, ghostly impression in the seat. Ethan's breath hitched as the final seconds played. The camera jerked. The view glitched. For one brief, terrifying moment, her face was directly in front of the camera. Her head tilted, her lips curled into that smile. And then, the footage ended. Ethan stared at the screen, his body rigid. His fingers hovered over the trackpad. He opened the rideshare app, checked his ride history. Her name was gone. No record of the trip, but there was something else. One single message written in the ride log. "Thank you for the ride. I'll see you again soon." Ethan slammed the laptop shut. His hands trembled. His world felt smaller. This wasn't just a glitch. This was an exhaustion. Something had seen him, chosen him. His phone buzzed. A new ride request. He almost ignored it, but then he saw the name. A name that felt familiar. He slowly turned his head toward the rearview mirror. The reflection smiled back, and in the back seat, she was already there. The end. first noticed the man while carrying boxes into his new apartment. The guy was standing in the driveway next door, arms crossed, wearing a black hoodie, his hoodie. Or at least, it looked exactly like the one Nick was wearing. Same faded brand logo, same loose thread near the pocket. Nick raised a hand in greeting. The man raised his hand at the same time, mirroring him. For a moment, it felt like looking into a dirty mirror. The neighbor gave a stiff little nod and walked inside. Nick tried to laugh it off, just a weird coincidence. But the next morning, when Nick stepped outside to get his mail, he saw the neighbor again. And this time the man wasn't just dressed like him. He had the same haircut, the same slight scruff on his jaw. Nick swallowed. "Hey man," he called out. "We look a lot alike, huh?" The neighbor grinned, tilting his head slightly. "Yeah," he said, "kinda weird." He turned and went back inside. That night, Nick was getting ready for bed when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Let me in." Nick's stomach dropped. He checked the security camera app on his phone. The screen flickered, then stabilized. His neighbor stood at the front door, smiling. Nick's fingers hovered over the lock screen. He could just ignore it, call the cops. But even as he thought about it, another text popped up. "I know you're awake." Nick grabbed his phone and dialed 911. His voice shook as he explained the situation. The dispatcher told him to wait inside. 15 minutes later, there was a sharp knock. Nick peered through the peephole. A uniformed officer stood outside. He exhaled in relief and opened the door. But the cop just stared at him, face pale. "We already sent someone here," the officer muttered. Nick frowned. "What? No, you're the first one." The cop stepped back suddenly, as if realizing something. His hand twitched near his radio. "Stay inside," he said, voice tight. Then he turned and hurried back to his patrol car. Nick slammed the door shut, locking it. His hands were shaking. He checked his phone again. Another text. "You don't need to keep fighting. It's better if you let me take over." Nick's throat tightened. His skin felt too small. He turned his phone face down and tried to breathe. Maybe he was losing it. The next morning, his front door was unlocked. Nick stood there, heart hammering. He was sure he'd locked it. Inside, his belongings were just a little off. His coffee mug had moved. His jacket was draped over the chair instead of hanging on the hook. A pair of his sneakers sat by the door, but they were slightly dirty, as if someone had walked in them. He checked the security footage. There was nothing. No one had entered. Nick walked to the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at his reflection. His face looked different. The skin under his eyes seemed darker. His lips felt too stretched. His reflection blinked. A second too late. Nick stumbled back. His phone buzzed. Another text. "Look in the mirror again." Nick turned off his phone and left the apartment. He stayed out all day. Anything to avoid going home. By the time he got back, it was dark. The air was still waiting. His stomach twisted as he stepped inside. The air smelled wrong. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Checked the camera. Nick swallowed. He hesitated, then opened the app. The feed crackled. His front door, this very door, stood open on the screen, and then someone walked inside. Himself. The version on screen was wearing the same clothes he was wearing now. Same shoes, same posture, but he moved wrong. The screen flickered. The Nick on screen turned, staring into the camera. And then he smiled. His mouth stretched wide, too wide. Nick's breath caught in his throat. His hands clenched around his phone. A final text popped up. "You don't need to be scared. I am you now." Nick looked up from the screen, and saw himself standing across the room. He couldn't move. The doppelganger's head tilted, studying him. "You don't have to fight," it said. The voice was the same as his, but it sounded warmer, friendlier. Nick stumbled back. His double took a slow step forward. Nick's mind screamed to run, to move, but where? "You let me in," the doppelganger said, smiling. "It's okay now." "No," Nick whispered. The thing sighed. "You don't get it," it said. "I've already been living your life. You're just catching up." Nick bolted. He ran out the door, down the stairs. He had to get out, had to. But the street outside was empty. Silent. No cars, no lights in the houses, like a set, waiting for its scene to begin. Nick turned, panting. His front door was open. The light inside was warm, welcoming. His doppelganger stood in the doorway, smiling. "Come back in," it said gently. Nick shook his head. "You don't have anywhere else to go," it said. "You know that, don't you?" Nick's hands clenched into fists. He took a step back, another, and then his phone vibrated. He looked down. The screen was black. Then faintly, a reflection appeared. His own face except the smile on the screen was stretching, the eyes darkening. Nick's throat closed. The image on the phone tilted its head, just like his doppelganger had. Then it blinked. Too slow. Nick gasped. His fingers trembled. The screen flickered once more, and then it wasn't his face anymore. His phone screen went black, and his voice whispered from the device. "Welcome home, Nick." Nick's breath hitched, his vision swam, and when he looked up, the doppelganger was gone. The front door was closed, and behind it, Nick heard the deadbolt lock. The end. Mark barely registered the ping of his phone as he rolled over in bed, half asleep. His eyes cracked open. Password reset successful. His stomach tensed. He didn't reset anything. He reached for his laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. His email account was still accessible, but another notification appeared. New login detected. Location, Chicago. Chicago. He hadn't left New York in months. His hands hovered over the keys, hesitating. A phishing scam, maybe. But then he saw the bank notification. $42 Nurse Coffee, Chicago IL, a cafe. Someone was using his card. Mark's breath quickened. He clicked on his banking app, expecting to dispute the charge, except the screen flickered. Session expired. Please log in again. The password didn't work. Mark shook off the unease as he arrived at his usual cafe. Nothing a quick call to the bank can't fix. He took a deep breath, focusing on the aroma of fresh coffee as he stepped inside. The barista glanced up and smiled. "Back again, huh?" Mark frowned. "What?" She grabbed a cup from the counter and held it out to him. "Your usual." "I haven't been here yet today." The barista cocked her head. "You were here 10 minutes ago." Mark forced a laugh, expecting her to joke, but she just looked at him. "Is this some kind of prank?" he asked. Her expression shifted, uncertain. "I mean, I saw you." A prickle of something icy slid down his spine. Mark turned on his heel and walked out. At work, the strangeness continued. "Hey, thanks again for covering for me yesterday," his coworker Ben said as they passed in the hallway. Mark stopped. "Yesterday?" Ben chuckled. "Yeah, dude, you were here all day." "No, I wasn't." Ben's smile faltered. "You were." Mark stepped back. His hands trembled. Something was wrong. His inbox was full of unread messages, all marked "Re your request." But he hadn't sent anything. He clicked on one. "Per your request, we've updated your profile information." Mark's throat tightened. "What request?" His phone rang. It was his boss. Relief surged through him as he picked up. Hey, listen, something's going on with my accounts. Silence. Then his own voice. You're not supposed to be calling. Mark's breath hitched. His hands grew clammy. Who is this? The voice chuckled. His voice. Don't worry, I'm taking care of it. The call ended. Mark sat frozen. His own voice. Someone had answered in his voice. He grabbed his things and bolted. Mark's apartment door was unlocked. He knew he had locked it that morning. His heart pounded as he pushed the door open. Inside, sitting at the kitchen table, was a man drinking from his favorite mug, a man who looked exactly like him. The double looked up. You're early, it said. Mark's legs locked. His breath came short, shallow. The double set the mug down and sighed. I thought I had more time. Mark's voice, his exact tone, inflection, except there was something off. The lips curled slightly too much at the edges. The smile was just a little too wide. Mark stumbled back. Who? What? You don't need to make this difficult, the thing said, rising from the chair. Mark turned and ran. Mark sprinted outside, panting, dialing 911. The call rang, then a click. 911, what's your emergency? Relief flooded him. Someone is in my apartment. He looks just like... Sir, can you verify your name? Mark blinked. My name, it's Mark Holloway. A pause. Then, no record of that name. Mark's throat closed. What? No, I live at 134 West. Sir, that address is registered to someone else. Mark's body went cold. Who? The dispatcher hesitated. Then in a mechanical tone, Mark Holloway. The call cut off. Frantic, Mark dug into his pocket and pulled out his ID. His fingers trembled. The name was still there. The birth date. The details. But the photo had changed. It was still him, but the smile was too wide. Mark's hands shook as he turned, looking up at his apartment window. The doppelganger stood inside, watching. Mark's vision swam. He stumbled forward, gripping his head. No, I'm real. I know I'm real. A whisper behind him. You were never supposed to be here. Mark whirled around. Darkness swallowed him whole. The alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m. Mark Holloway stretched and sat up. He glanced at his phone. A notification blinked on the screen. Facial recognition updated successfully. He smiled, and this time, the smile was just right. The end. Emily's key didn't fit. That was the first sign that something was wrong. She stared at the lock, frowning, and tried again. The key slid in, sure, but when she turned it, there was resistance, like the tumblers inside had been changed. Her first thought was exhaustion. It had been a long shift at the hospital, 14 hours on her feet, 3 of them spent unsuccessfully reviving an old man whose heart had simply given up. Maybe she had grabbed the wrong key from her bag. Maybe she was at the wrong door. But no, this was 12B. Apartment 12B at 409 Harper Street. The same blue welcome mat, the same dent in the door near the handle from when she tried to move in a box of books with her hip. Her apartment. Emily knocked, pressing her ear against the wood. There were footsteps inside. Then the deadbolt turned. The man who opened the door was wearing her sweatshirt. The same University of Vermont hoodie she had bought in college. The cuffs chewed from where she used to gnaw at them during finals. He was taller than her, maybe mid-30s, dark hair. His eyes ran over her face, bored, uninterested. Yeah, Emily blinked. What the hell are you doing in my apartment? The man let out a small laugh. I think you have the wrong place, lady. No, Emily snapped. This is my place. She held up her key as if that proved anything. I live here. Who is it, honey? Emily's stomach twisted. A woman's voice, soft, familiar. And then she appeared, stepping into the hall, resting a delicate hand on the man's shoulder. Emily's breath caught. The woman was her. Not exactly, but close enough to make her gut twist. The same freckled skin, the same slight upturn of the nose. But her hair, Emily's hair, was longer, looser, and her voice was a fraction softer, more delicate, like a movie version of herself, one edited to be more palatable. Oh, the woman said, tilting her head. You must have the wrong address. Emily took a step back. No, this is... She looked around wildly. This is a joke, right, Sarah? The landlord's name felt foreign on her tongue. The woman smiled politely. I think you should go, the man said, his tone now firmer. Emily's pulse pounded in her throat. The woman gave her a sympathetic glance. You must be tired, she said, voice syrupy, almost rehearsed. Maybe you had a long day. Maybe you just got confused. And then, before Emily could respond, the door shut. Emily's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone. Mom, voicemail. Rachel, voicemail. Jeremy, voicemail. Each call rang and rang until they disconnected. She checked her texts. The last message from Rachel was from 2 weeks ago. It read, "See you tonight." Emily had no memory of seeing her. She stormed to the landlord's office, gripping her lease like a lifeline. The name on the contract was hers. The address was hers. But Sarah, the real Sarah, standing behind the desk, face creased with irritation, barely glanced at it before shaking her head. Apartment 12B, Sarah said. That's been rented to the McCarthy family for 3 years now. Emily's mouth went dry. No, she whispered. No, I live there. Sarah's gaze darkened. She folded her arms. Miss, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but I don't have time for this. Emily could hardly hear her. The walls of the office felt too tight, like they were closing in. The world around her, one she had known all her life, was shifting under her feet like sand. The city felt foreign. The streetlights too bright, the people too stiff, their faces unfamiliar. She walked past a group of neighbors, people she had nodded to in the hallways 100 times, but when she met their eyes, there was no recognition. She wasn't there. That night, Emily broke in. She waited until the lights inside her apartment, their apartment, flickered off. Then she climbed the fire escape, just like she had done 100 times when she forgot her keys. Except this time, she wasn't the one who belonged inside. Her hands trembled as she lifted the window, soft, careful, silent. She stepped inside. Everything was wrong. The couch wasn't in the right place. The bookshelves were filled, but not with her books. The fridge had magnets, little notes stuck to it, written in neat looping cursive, her own handwriting, but not quite right. Then, the pictures, framed, covering the bedroom wall. Her chest tightened as she approached them. They were pictures of her life, her apartment, her dog, the one who had died 3 years ago, her vacations, her birthday party last year. But she wasn't in them. She was the woman. Emily's knees buckled. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. And then in the silence, she heard it, a whisper. I told you she'd come back. Her breath stilled. A shadow shifted in the hallway. Her door slammed shut behind her. Darkness. Then the sound of footsteps, heavy, slow, coming toward her. Emily turned to run, but something cold wrapped around her wrist, not a hand, something worse. It felt like fingers, longer than they should be, pressing into her skin like they could see inside her. Her throat closed. The last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was the photo hanging in the center of the wall. A photo of the 3 of them, the woman, someone else. A blurred shape, a shape with Emily's outline, with her posture, her clothes, but no face, like someone had scrubbed it out, like someone had erased her. And then, the next morning, the woman from 12B hummed as she made coffee, pressing a kiss to her husband's cheek. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. She smiled, rubbing her wrists absent-mindedly, like a dream. Then she turned to the window. Outside, the street was empty. For a brief second, she thought she saw a shadow on the glass, a silhouette lingering behind her own reflection, watching, waiting. But when she blinked, it was gone. And then, so was she. The end. Mia didn't believe in urban legends. She had lived in the city long enough to know most were just myths, stories passed down to scare people into behaving. So when she moved into the Renshaw, a sleek high-rise with surprisingly cheap rent, she barely glanced at the fine print in her lease, until she saw the rule, a single piece of paper, typed in bold: "Do not look at the fifth-floor window from the street at night." Mia scoffed. "What's this?" The landlord, Mr. Owens, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, didn't answer right away. Instead, he tapped a pen against the desk and sighed. "It's just a rule we ask tenants to follow," he said, "for your own safety." Mia raised an eyebrow. "What happens if I do?" He didn't blink. "You don't want to see who's looking back." A chill ran through her, but she forced a smirk. Is this some kind of marketing gimmick? His face remained unreadable. Mia signed the lease. Her neighbor Daniel was the first person she met. A guy in his late 20s, friendly but cautious. He lived down the hall and had been in the building for almost a year. "You'll like it here," he said, helping her carry a box inside. "Mostly quiet." "Mostly," Mia teased. Daniel hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You read the rule, right?" Mia rolled her eyes. "Yeah. Do people actually believe that?" He didn't laugh. "You'd be surprised," he muttered. Later that night, she met Lisa, another tenant, while waiting for the elevator. Lisa was in her 30s, sarcastic, and according to Daniel, a bit of a skeptic herself. "You hear the ghost story yet?" Lisa joked. Mia smirked. "Daniel's really into it." Lisa snorted. "Please, I looked at that stupid window a week ago." Mia perked up. "And?" Lisa winked. Nothing. Guess I'm immune to whatever's up there." The elevator dinged. Lisa stepped in. "See you around," she said. The doors closed. The next morning, Mia went to grab coffee. Lisa was nowhere to be seen. At first, she didn't think much of it. But then Daniel knocked on her door, looking pale. "You heard from Lisa?" "No," Mia said. "Why?" His jaw tightened. "Her apartment's empty." "What?" Mia followed Daniel down the hall. The door to 3B stood wide open. Inside, nothing. No furniture, no clothes, no Lisa. "She moved?" Mia asked, though something in her gut said that wasn't right. Daniel shook his head. "No moving trucks, no notice. It's like she was never here." Mia felt suddenly sick. They checked the tenant list in the lobby. Lisa's name wasn't there. It was as if she had never existed. The story spread, a warning disguised as a mystery. Some tenants ignored it. Others whispered about the figure in the window, a shape some claimed to see moving behind the glass. And then there was Carlos. Carlos, a fitness trainer from the 3rd floor, overheard Mia and Daniel talking in the hallway. "You guys are way too into this," he laughed. Daniel stiffened. "Just don't be stupid." Carlos smirked. "What's the worst that could happen?" That night at 3 a.m., Mia woke to a loud thump outside. Her breath hitched. She ran to her window. Carlos stood on the sidewalk, phone raised, staring up. His expression was blank. Then slowly his mouth opened, his eyes going impossibly wide. And then he dropped the phone. Mia barely had time to react before he turned and walked inside. Morning came. Carlos was gone, his apartment empty. Mia felt like she was losing her mind. She ran to the landlord's office. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Where's Carlos? Where's Lisa?" Mr. Owens sighed, rubbing his temples. "I told you not to look." Her stomach turned. "Who's in that window?" The landlord's face darkened. "Nothing, and that's exactly how it should stay." Daniel snapped. "We have to know," he hissed. "We can't just let this happen." Mia grabbed his arm. "Daniel, don't." But he was already heading outside, phone in hand. Mia followed, pulse hammering. Daniel stood on the sidewalk, raised his phone, and pointed it up. His breath hitched, his hands trembled. Then, his face went slack. The phone slipped from his fingers. He turned, walked inside. Mia grabbed his phone. The screen was still recording. Her fingers shook. She pressed play. Daniel lifted his phone. The fifth-floor window stared back. At first it was dark. Then something moved, a pale shape, a face. But it wasn't just looking. It was watching, waiting, smiling. Daniel's face twisted. His breath quickened. Then in the video, a voice, low, right behind the camera. "Now he belongs up here too." The video ended. Mia's breath shuddered. She checked the time. At 3:13 a.m. Morning. Daniel's apartment was empty. Mia checked her phone. His contact was gone. No messages, no proof, just nothing. She ran to Mr. Owens. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew what happens." His eyes were tired. "That's why I warned you." She wanted to scream. Instead, she went to her room. She locked her door. That night, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't look." A sound echoed above her. Knocking, slow, deliberate. She squeezed her eyes shut, covered her ears, but then, breathing right outside her window, her reflection stared back, and behind her, another reflection smiled. The end. Luis was 2 fares away from calling it a night when he saw her. The bus station was nearly deserted at this hour, just an empty bench and a flickering street lamp casting a dull glow over the pavement. He wouldn't have stopped, wouldn't have even noticed her, if not for the way she stood. Not under the street lamp, not at the curb, but in the shadow just beyond the light, watching the road. Waiting, he unlocked the door, more out of habit than choice. She stepped forward, her movements smooth, deliberate. She did not wave him down, did not look around nervously like most lone women at this hour. She simply opened the door, slid into the back seat, and folded her hands neatly in her lap. She wore a dark blue dress, something old-fashioned. Her skin was pale, almost colorless. Her hair hung limp over her shoulders, damp from the humidity. The air inside the cab suddenly felt much colder. "Where to?" Luis asked, flicking his meter on. She spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper. 41 Crescent Road. The name meant nothing to him. He nodded, started driving. The woman did not move. Most passengers fidgeted, checked their phones, cleared their throats, made polite conversation. Not her. She stared straight ahead, hands still neatly folded, expression unreadable. Luis kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. There was something wrong about the way she sat, as if she wasn't really there, more like a prop, something placed in the back seat rather than a living person. He tried to shake the unease, probably just tired. Long shifts did that to you. They drove in silence, the only sound the occasional burst of static from the radio. Then, as they neared the destination, the GPS began to glitch. The screen flickered, the map rerouting itself even though they were only 2 turns away. The blue navigation line twisted, leading somewhere else, a road that didn't match the one ahead. Luis frowned. GPS errors weren't unusual, but this was something else. The map warped, the streets stretching, shifting like something alive. He glanced at the woman. She had tilted her head slightly now, as if listening to something only she could hear. "We're almost there," he said, mostly to fill the silence. A pause, then in a whisper, "It's not time yet." Luis slowed as they approached the address. 41 Crescent Road was not a house anymore. It had been, once, but now it was a husk, a crumbling, abandoned structure with a sagging roof and shattered windows. The mailbox leaned sideways, rusted through. The yard was nothing but dry, dead weeds. He cleared his throat. We're here." The woman did not move. She just sat, hands still folded, and smiled slightly. The GPS screen flickered again. The route adjusted. A new destination appeared, miles away. Luis blinked. He hadn't touched anything. The car's engine rumbled louder as if urging him forward. The gas gauge was still full, even though he'd been driving for hours. The woman turned her head slowly, fixing him with a gaze through the mirror. "It's not time yet." Luis swallowed. He put the car in park, forcing a chuckle. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of..." The car lurched forward. His foot was on the brake, but the car kept moving. Luis gripped the wheel, trying again to slow down. The brakes didn't respond. The gas gauge didn't budge. The streets outside were wrong. He didn't recognize them anymore. Buildings faded. Streetlights disappeared. The roads became narrower, curving in impossible directions, leading him deeper into somewhere that shouldn't exist. The radio crackled. At first just static, then whispers. His name, Luis, Luis, Luis. He felt something shift in the back seat. Heart pounding, he glanced at the rearview mirror. The seat was empty. A chill ran through him. He checked the mirror again. The back seat was still empty. Then, the woman was sitting beside him. Neatly folded hands, same slight smile. She had never moved. Luis let out a sharp breath, yanking the wheel. "Get out of my car." She did not react. She simply turned her head toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "You were never supposed to pick me up." Luis was no longer driving. The car was driving itself. The road stretched endlessly ahead, its edges dark and undefined, the trees warped and leaning in too close. His hands trembled on the wheel. "This isn't real," he muttered. The woman leaned closer. She whispered something in his ear. The words are never revealed. But Luis's grip on the wheel loosened. His shoulders relaxed. His breathing steadied. The whispers from the radio grew softer. The road ahead darkened. Then silence. The highway was empty. A single yellow taxi sat parked on the shoulder, engine idling. The driver's seat was empty. The passenger door was open. A soft beeping noise came from the GPS screen. A new destination had been entered. One word, home. The end. James dropped his suitcase by the door and let out a long sigh. The flight had been exhausting, the conference even worse, and all he wanted now was to collapse onto the stiff hotel bed and sleep. He swiped the key card, entered, and flicked on the light. Standard business hotel setup. Beige walls, generic framed art, a desk no one ever used. But something felt off. His eyes swept the room, and then he saw it. 3 doors, one led to the hallway, another to the bathroom. But the third was locked. No markings, no peephole, just a plain white door, flush with the wall as though it had always been there. James frowned. He'd stayed in enough hotels to know layouts were uniform. Bathroom, closet, exit. No extra doors. He tugged at the knob. It didn't budge. He pulled out his phone and dialed the front desk. "Hi, I just checked in. Quick question. There's an extra door in my room, but it's locked. What's it for?" A pause. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you clarify?" "The door in my room. There are 3. The third one is locked." "Sir, there are only 2 doors in your room." James stiffened. "No, I'm looking at it right now. It's right next to the bathroom." Another pause. Then the woman on the other end let out a light, uneasy laugh. "That's not possible, sir. There's no extra door in any of our rooms." James swallowed. "Right. Never mind." He hung up. Maybe it was a maintenance closet. Maybe the front desk just didn't know. He shook it off, showered, and collapsed into bed. At 3 a.m. he woke up. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was soft, rhythmic, coming from across the room. James sat up, heart hammering. The locked door. The knocking stopped. Then, scrape, long, deliberate, dragging, like something with nails. James gritted his teeth. He wasn't getting up. It was nothing, just pipes or air pressure or... A shadow moved beneath the door. His breath caught in his throat. No, he imagined it. The night stretched, heavy and silent. By dawn, he was certain it had just been his exhausted mind playing tricks on him. But as he got up and rubbed the sleep from his eyes, he turned toward the door and saw it was slightly open. A crack, barely an inch. James's stomach lurched. He took a slow step forward, hand outstretched. The air near the door felt wrong, stagnant, heavy. With one deep breath, he pushed it open and froze. It was his hotel room, identical layout. Same desk, same suitcase, same unmade bed. But something was off. The air felt denser, almost muffled, the colors slightly muted. And then, the bed. Someone was lying under the covers. James's throat went dry. The shape was identical to his own body, positioned exactly how he had slept the night before. A horrible realization crept up his spine. "It's me." His phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. "Close the door. If you see yourself move, it's already too late." His pulse pounded. His double in the bed was still, not breathing, not shifting, just lying there. But he couldn't look away. Then the sheets shifted. The breath in James's chest turned to ice. The thing in the bed stirred, a slow, almost groggy movement. James took a step back. The air in the duplicate room seemed to contract, like it was breathing inward, pulling him in. His own reflection in the mirror on the far wall glitched for a fraction of a second, a barely perceptible flicker. Then the body in the bed exhaled. James lunged for the door and slammed it shut. The second it clicked, the knocking returned. This time it wasn't soft. Bang, bang. He staggered back, gripping the handle as though something might push it open from the other side. His phone vibrated again. "That won't hold it. Leave the hotel." His body jolted into motion. He grabbed a suitcase, shoved his feet into his shoes, and scrambled for the exit. Then he stopped. The hallway door was gone. His stomach dropped. He whirled around. The only door left was the locked one. He stepped back, his pulse roaring in his ears. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Behind him, the banging on the door slowed. Then, the knob began to turn. James's breath hitched. He backed against the wall, unable to take his eyes off the twisting, rattling handle. A voice, just barely a whisper, murmured from the other side. "You shouldn't have opened it." The door creaked. A sliver of darkness. Something shifted inside. The air grew thick, suffocating. Then slowly, the door began to swing open. James clenched his fists, heart pounding against his ribs. Then, everything went black. The end. May's 24-hour diner sat on the edge of nowhere, its flickering neon sign barely visible against the highway's endless stretch of darkness. The kind of place truckers stopped at for coffee thick enough to burn a hole in your gut, and locals ignored because they knew better. Danny hated his new job, but it paid, and that was what mattered. The place smelled like old grease and burnt toast. The coffee machine dripped at odd intervals, even when no one used it. Frank, the manager, leaned over the counter on Danny's first night shift. His voice was low, almost casual. If you see a man in a gray coat sitting at the counter, don't acknowledge him. Danny laughed, thinking it was some weird inside joke. What, like a ghost or something? Frank's face didn't move. Just don't. That was the first sign he should have left right then and there. At 3:15 a.m., the bell above the door gave a soft chime. Danny looked up from wiping down the counter and saw a man in a gray coat. He sat at the far end, hands neatly folded, expression unreadable. Something about him made Danny's stomach clench. He wasn't doing anything weird, just sitting. But his posture was too stiff, like he was waiting. Danny hesitated, then called out automatically, "Need anything?" The man in gray slowly lifted his head. His lips curled up just a little too wide. "I've been waiting for you to notice me." Danny's throat tightened. Something about the way he said it made his skin crawl. The bell above the door hadn't rung when he came in. The next night, things changed. Danny found plates rearranged when no one was looking. Cups moved from the sink to the counter. He knew where he put things, but now they weren't where they were supposed to be. He checked the security camera. It showed everything normal until 3:15 a.m. The footage skipped forward. No sign of the man in gray arriving. Danny rewound. Same thing. Frank walked in for the morning shift and saw him staring at the monitor. He sighed. "Told you not to talk to him." Danny turned, frustration rising. "Who is he?" Frank just shook his head and walked past. The third night, Danny saw the man in gray outside. He was standing at the edge of the parking lot, still, watching. Danny swallowed. It was raining, but the man in gray wasn't wet. His coat hung perfectly dry against his too stiff shoulders. Danny turned away, forced himself not to look. When he glanced back, he was closer. Danny's stomach twisted. He blinked, even closer. Danny ran to the door and locked it. He backed away, breath shallow. When he looked through the glass again, the man was gone. The bell above the door didn't chime, but when Danny turned, a steaming cup of coffee was waiting on the counter. At 3:15 a.m. on the fourth night, the door opened by itself. The diner was empty. Danny's heart pounded as he checked the security footage. The screen showed him standing behind the counter, alone. No door opening, no coffee appearing. Something was wrong with reality. Danny stormed into the back. Frank was sitting at the employee table, drinking coffee like it was any other night. "I quit," Danny snapped. "I'm done." Frank exhaled through his nose. He nodded, almost sad. "Hope you make it home." Danny didn't ask what he meant. He just grabbed his jacket and ran for his car. The road stretched out before him, dark and empty. Danny drove fast, trying to shake off the creeping dread still clinging to his skin. The diner faded in his rearview mirror, but the road felt wrong. No landmarks, just the same endless stretch, like a loop repeating itself. Danny glanced glanced at his rearview mirror. The man in gray was in the back seat. Danny's breath caught in his throat. "You forgot something," the man in gray whispered. Danny slammed on the brakes. His tires screeched against the asphalt, throwing the car into a skid. His heart pounded as he threw open the door and stumbled out. The car's interior was empty. His breath shook. He ran a trembling hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it. Then he looked down the highway. His stomach turned ice cold. The diner's neon sign flickered in the distance. Impossible. He'd been driving for miles. Danny spun to look at his car. The man in gray was sitting in the driver's seat now, staring at him. Danny took a step back, then another. His body screamed at him to run, but his legs felt heavy, like he was sinking into something unseen. The diner's neon glow never faded. The road didn't lead anywhere. Danny started walking. He didn't know where else to go. He walked and walked and walked, but the diner never got any further away. Inside, the bell above the door chimed softly. A steaming cup of coffee waited on the counter. The door swung open just a little, waiting. The end. Daniel almost tripped over the package on his way in. It was small, unmarked, wrapped in plain brown paper. No return address, no sender. He frowned, glancing up and down the empty hallway of his apartment building. The air smelled of stale carpet and forgotten lives. Maybe the delivery guy left it by mistake. Still, his name was scrawled across the top in thick black ink. Daniel Morrow. He carried it inside, setting it on his coffee table. The city hummed outside his window, neon lights flickering against the glass. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Ripping open the paper, he found an old VHS tape inside. Its plastic shell was scratched, and across the label, someone had written in red marker, "Watch me." A chill climbed his spine. Who even used VHS anymore? He almost threw it away, but the nagging thought wouldn't leave. Who sent this? Why? Curiosity won. He spent the next hour tracking down a VCR from a thrift shop down the block. The guy at the counter chuckled when he asked for one. "Throwback night," the man asked, scanning the dusty machine. "Something like that," Daniel muttered. Back home, Daniel slid the VHS into the player and pressed play. The screen crackled to life, static, then grainy footage. His stomach knotted. It was his apartment. The camera was positioned from outside, angled toward his living room window. He felt a cold prickling at the back of his neck. The footage jumped forward. Now he saw himself lying in bed. The timestamp in the corner read 3:12 a.m. tomorrow. Daniel swallowed hard. Then the video cut again. This time the footage showed him sitting right here, watching this tape. His breath hitched. The final frame lingered, him staring at the screen. But behind him, in the reflection of the TV, a figure stood. He slammed the stop button. The screen went black. His reflection in the dark TV was normal, but his pulse thundered. Just a prank, right? Someone messing with him. He rewound the tape, watched again. This time, as the final frame approached, the TV glitched. A split-second distortion rippled across the screen. Then, the timestamp changed. It no longer said 3:12 a.m. tomorrow. It now read 3:12 a.m. tonight. Daniel didn't sleep. The clock on his phone crept toward 3:12 a.m. He sat on the couch, staring at his own darkened reflection in the TV screen. His chest was tight. The air in the apartment felt heavy, like the walls were closing in. Then his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "You're watching it wrong. Look behind you." His skin went ice cold. The TV flickered. reflection showed someone standing behind him, his own body, but wrong. A slight distortion, like a VHS tracking error twisting his face. It was smiling. Daniel whipped around. Nothing, he panted, sweat breaking along his brow. The TV screen flickered again. The Daniel on the screen didn't turn around. It just sat there, staring at him, grinning wider. Daniel bolted from the couch, grabbed the VHS and yanked it from the player. The TV didn't turn off. The screen kept playing the footage. The timestamp was still moving forward. His reflection on the screen stood up. Daniel did not. He backed toward the door, his legs trembling. The Daniel on the screen tilted its head. Then it walked toward the TV as if stepping closer to him. Daniel turned, grabbed his coat, and ran. He sprinted down the hallway, down the stairs. The night air was crisp, electric. He didn't stop running until he reached the street. Chest heaving, he pulled out his phone. The time was 3:13 a.m. He should have felt relief. But then, his phone screen flickered. For a split second he saw himself on the camera app, a live recording. Except he wasn't holding the phone. The perspective was from someone standing behind him. A whisper, low and warped, came through the speaker. "You can't leave yourself behind." Daniel didn't remember how he got back to the apartment. It was morning now. Sunlight bled through the windows. The TV was off. The VHS tape sat on the floor. The VCR had been unplugged. Had he dreamed it? Slowly he stood and approached the TV. His own reflection gazed back at him, tired, gaunt. His hands were shaking. He picked up the tape. The label had changed. No longer "Watch Me." Now, in the same jagged handwriting, it read, "You are next." His phone vibrated again. A new message. Check the date. Daniel frowned, swiping down the screen. February 19, 1996. His stomach plummeted. The apartment around him looked different. The furniture older. The world outside the window wrong. A sharp knock at the door made him jump. Heart hammering, he crept toward it. Looked through the peephole. A package sat on the floor outside, wrapped in brown paper. No sender, no return address. But the name written across the top, Daniel Morrow. The end. The first time Anna Walker visited Willowbrook Kindergarten, she thought she had misheard something, or rather misheard nothing. No laughing, no whispering, not even the soft rustle of papers or crayons. The silence inside the classroom was unnatural. The children sat at their desks, small hands folded, wide eyes fixed on their teacher, Miss Viola, as she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "They're just very well behaved," Miss Viola had assured her. Anna had forced a smile and nodded. What else could she say? She was lucky to get Eli into such a pristine school. That was 2 weeks ago. Now she wasn't so sure. It started with the notebook. Anna found it on Eli's desk one night. The usual sloppy letters and numbers were gone. Instead, the pages were filled with impossible symbols, dark, curling strokes that didn't belong to any alphabet she knew. She flipped through, heart thudding. Among the symbols were sentences, eerie phrases that he had never learned to write. The quiet is watching. No more words, no more wrong. Silence is safe. She sucked in a breath and turned to Eli, sleeping soundly in bed. His small chest rose and fell in even breaths. Anna shook him gently. "Eli," she whispered. He blinked awake, staring up at her with glassy blue eyes. "Where did you learn this?" she asked, showing him the notebook. His lips moved. No sound came out. Anna felt ice slide down her spine. The next morning, Anna stormed into Willowbrook. The school smelled of fresh paint and lemon cleaner, but something felt wrong, as if the building itself were listening. She marched into the classroom, where the children sat too still, backs straight, hands folded, their pale, unblinking faces turned toward her in unison. Miss Viola rose from her desk. "Serene Walker," she said in that soft, sticky, sweet voice. "Is something wrong?" Anna slapped Eli's notebook onto the desk. "What the hell is this? What have you been teaching him?" Miss Viola glanced at the pages. Her expression didn't change. "Oh, Eli's doing so well," she said, voice warm but empty. "He's learning quickly." Anna's fingers curled into a fist. "Learning what? What do these words mean?" Miss Viola only smiled. Anna's stomach churned. She turned on her heel and stormed to the principal's office. The principal, Mr. Albright, was waiting, as if he'd been expecting her. He was an older man with neatly combed hair and a well-pressed suit. But there was something wrong with his face. His smile was too wide, as if it had been pulled too hard at the corners. "Ah, Mrs. Walker," he said, "would you like to enroll yourself instead?" Anna took a step back, pulse hammering. "I want answers, and you'll get them," he assured her, "all in time." The sound of shuffling feet made her turn through the glass window of the office. She saw them, the children. They stood outside in perfect rows, watching. Their lips moved soundlessly, forming words that never came. Then they raised their fingers to their lips. Shh! Anna barely remembered driving home. That night she locked every door and window, pacing the living room. Eli's notebook sat on the table, pages open. The symbols seemed to move in the dim light. Then she heard it, a whisper. It wasn't coming from Eli's room. It wasn't coming from anywhere. It was inside her own head. "Silence is safe." She clapped her hands over her ears. Her own breathing sounded too loud in the empty house. She ran to Eli's room. His bed was empty. A chill coiled around her ribs. Slowly, she turned toward the doorway, and there he was. Eli stood motionless, his small body silhouetted in the dim hallway light. His pajamas were wrinkled. His bare feet made no sound on the wooden floor. "Eli," Anna whispered, throat dry. "Baby." His lips moved, no sound. Then he raised his finger to his lips. "Shh." Anna didn't sleep. By morning, she had made a decision. They were leaving. She packed a bag, grabbed Eli's coat, and marched him toward the door. But the moment she reached for the doorknob, Eli dug in his heels. He wouldn't move. "Eli, we have to go," she pleaded. His lips trembled. His small hands twitched at his sides, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. And then, from the street, Anna heard it. A voice. Not just one, many. The children, they stood on the sidewalk in neat little lines, dressed in their perfect uniforms, hands clasped, their mouths opened and closed, silent words. Eli turned to her, his blue eyes filled with terror. Anna understood too late. It wasn't that Eli wouldn't speak. It was that the quiet had already taken his voice. Her stomach twisted. "Eli, look at me." But he was already walking away, out the front door, toward the children. Anna screamed his name, but no sound left her throat. Her voice was gone. She clutched at her mouth, panic rising in her chest. No words, no breath, just silence. In the street, the children smiled too wide. Eli turned back one last time. His lips moved. Shh. The next day, Willowbrook Kindergarten welcomed a new student. She was older than the others. Her hair hung loose, her wide eyes dull and empty. She sat with her hands folded. She listened well. When the teacher asked, "Are we ready to begin?" she did not speak. She only raised a finger to her lips. The end. Jared unboxed his new smartphone, peeling the plastic film off the screen with slow satisfaction. His old phone had been glitching for weeks. Random crashes, distorted photos, apps opening by themselves. He had ignored it at first, but after waking up to find his front camera already recording, he decided it was time for an upgrade. The new phone was a beast. Fast, crystal clear resolution. The kind of screen that made reality look sharper than it actually was. That night, lying in bed, he decided to test the camera. He angled the phone, adjusted the lighting, and snapped a selfie. The image was perfect, sharp, detailed, almost too high definition, except for the blurry shadow behind him. Jared frowned. The image showed the soft yellow glow of his bedside lamp, the wooden headboard, the plain white wall, and something else lurking just behind his shoulder. He turned around. Nothing was there. Probably a lens smudge. He wiped the camera and tried again. The shadow was still there, darker now. His stomach tightened. He leaned closer, squinting at the photo. It wasn't just a shadow. It was the faint outline of a person, a woman. His breath hitched. His hands felt clammy. It had to be a software glitch. Right? He deleted the picture and locked his phone, not dealing with this. The next day he forgot about it. Work kept him busy, drowning in meetings and unread emails. By the time he got home, the eerie selfie was nothing more than a weird memory. Until he checked his phone. His wallpaper had changed. The image, the selfie he deleted, and the woman was clearer now. She was still blurry, but he could make out details. Damp, tangled hair clinging to her face, her shoulders hunched like her body was wrongly assembled. Her eyes were hidden in the blur, but they were locked onto him. His pulse thumped against his temples. He hadn't set this picture as his wallpaper, had he? He quickly swapped it back to his old lock screen, a boring landscape shot of the mountains. But the second he locked his phone, the image reset itself. The selfie returned, and now she was even closer. By the third night, she had started showing up in other places. At first it was subtle, a notification he didn't recognize, a text conversation that rewrote itself when he wasn't looking. Then, on a video call with his friend Eric, the screen glitched, turning into pixelated static, Eric's voice distorted. "Jared, dude, your camera's messed up." "What do you mean?" Eric hesitated. There was someone behind you for a second." Jared's throat closed, his hands felt numb. He flipped the front camera on, his face filled the screen. Behind him, just the dim glow of his apartment, nothing else. Still, he barely slept that night, and at 3:12 a.m., his phone vibrated loudly on the nightstand. New contact added. He swallowed dryly and clicked it open. There was no number, no email, no profile picture, just a name, her. The next morning he refused to look at the phone. It didn't matter. She started appearing in other apps. He went to check his photo gallery, and among his casual pictures, work documents, concert photos, vacation shots, there were new images, grainy, black and white security footage of his apartment, angles he didn't recognize, corners of his bedroom, the bathroom mirror, the space behind his couch, and in one of them she was there, standing in the doorway, watching. His chest tightened. He checked the image details. Timestamp, last night at 3:12 a.m., the same time he got the contact notification. Jared Factory reset the phone, wiped everything, set it up as brand new, but the second it restarted, the wallpaper had already changed back. The same image, only now the woman's face was visible. Her eyes were open, bloodshot, hollow, looking straight at him. That was when he stopped using the phone. He threw it in a drawer, ignored notifications, refused to touch it. It didn't matter. She had already moved in. That night, the buzzing started again. A new message popped up on the screen. Her, don't ignore me. He didn't sleep, and at exactly 3:12 a.m. his phone rang. No caller ID, just incoming video call. Jared stared at the screen, his breath shallow, his hands cold. The preview loaded. The camera feed showed his bedroom, filmed from inside his closet. His stomach dropped. He hadn't opened his closet. Not since yesterday. But as he looked at the phone, something moved in the shadows of the doorframe. A slow, creaking sound filled the silence. The closet door was opening. Jared didn't turn around. He couldn't. He reached for the phone with trembling fingers. The call ended. A new message replaced it. Her, look behind you. His breath hitched. No. He squeezed his eyes shut, but then his phone vibrated again. New wallpaper set. The image, a fresh selfie of him, taken right now, and she was standing directly behind him. The next morning, Jared was gone. His apartment remained untouched. His keys sat on the counter. His wallet was in his jacket. But his phone, it was missing. And later, when his friends called him, his numbers still rang, still connected, still active. And if they looked close enough at his WhatsApp profile photo, they could see him, just barely, standing in the background, with her, smiling. The end. Daniel Cho rubbed his tired eyes, blinking at the dim glow of his laptop screen. It was late. Too late. The last of his co-workers had left hours ago, their hurried goodbyes echoing in the cavernous, open-plan office. The hum of the fluorescents overhead was the only sound now, blending with the distant murmur of the city outside. He closed his laptop and exhaled, first in, last out. That's what it took to stand out in a company like this. As he slung his bag over his shoulder, a voice made him jump. Late night, huh? Daniel turned. Warren, the security guard, stood near the reception desk, arms crossed. The man had the world-weary expression of someone who had seen far too many people come and go. Yeah, Daniel muttered, forcing a polite smile, just trying to make a good impression. Warren's mouth twitched upward, but his eyes stayed serious. That's what they all say. Daniel nodded and made his way toward the elevators. Hey kid, Warren called out just as Daniel pressed the button. If things get weird, take the stairs. Daniel frowned. Weird how? The elevator dinged. Warren didn't answer. The doors slid shut, swallowing Daniel into the metallic stillness of the elevator car. He tapped the G button for the ground floor. The numbers above glowed as the elevator began its descent. 6, 5, 4, through. Then, nothing. The elevator did not stop at 1. It did not stop at G either. Instead, the panel flickered and displayed B2. Daniel frowned. There was no B2 in this building. He jabbed the G button again. Nothing. The closed doors button didn't respond either. The air inside the elevator grew thick and stale. The elevator slowed, and with a faint hiss, the doors slid open. At first he thought the basement was under renovation. The hallway beyond was long, stretching unnaturally into flickering fluorescent light. The walls were lined with outdated company logos, some peeling at the edges. The air smelled damp, thick with mildew. Framed portraits hung along the corridor, arranged in 2 perfect rows. Employees. Men and women in formal business attire staring out with stiff smiles. The faces looked too forced, too posed. Daniel stayed inside the elevator, his fingers hovering over the button panel, pressing G again and again. The doors wouldn't close. A fluorescent light buzzed and died, plunging a section of the hallway into darkness. Then, A sound, soft, wet breathing. Daniel's heart stuttered. His eyes darted toward the portraits again. Some of them now looked different. Their eyes seemed deeper, their expressions slightly changed. Then he saw it. His own face, a framed portrait centered among the others. But he had never taken that picture, and the date beneath his name read 1983. His breath came quick and shallow. He turned to the elevator, hitting the buttons with frantic urgency. The doors remained stubbornly open, the buttons unresponsive. Somewhere down the hall, another fluorescent buzzed out. The portrait seemed closer now, though he hadn't moved. And then, at the very end of the hallway, a shape, not walking, sliding. The breathing grew louder, thick and wrong. Daniel's pulse thundered. He stumbled back against the threshold of the elevator, one foot still inside. The air felt heavy, pressing down on his shoulders. The lights flickered once, then went out. For a moment there was nothing, just blackness, the distant, muffled sound of his own breath. Then, right next to him, a wet, shuddering inhale. Something was in the dark with him. A hand grabbed his wrist, clammy, too many fingers, too strong. Daniel screamed, yanking himself free. He ran. There was a door at the end of the hallway. Exit. He sprinted, lungs burning, the air behind him thickening, congealing. The breathing turned to whispers. Come back, we remember you. His shoes pounded against the slick floor. The exit sign flickered ahead, faint, distant. Something moved behind him. A shadow impossibly tall, its form shifting, warping with each step. Daniel threw himself forward, slamming into the door, and fell into the elevator. He hit the floor hard, gasping. The doors dinged, then slid open. Ground floor, the lobby. Cool, sterile air rushed in, replacing the thick dampness of the basement. Daniel looked up, disoriented. Warren was staring at him from behind the security desk, his eyes wide with confusion. Where the hell did you come from? Daniel staggered out. His limbs trembled as he turned to the elevator. The button panel was normal. No B2, it had never been there. His breath hitched. Warren muttered something, clicking through security feeds. His brows furrowed. Kid, he whispered. Look at this. Daniel stepped closer, his stomach tightening as he peered at the grainy black and white footage. On the screen, the last recorded footage of him showed the basement doors opening. The grainy video showed him standing in the elevator, stepping out. Then, the footage glitched. For a fraction of a second, the static flickered, just long enough to reveal a second shape. Something stepped into the elevator. A shape too tall, too thin, not quite human. The video froze. Daniel's breath caught. His fingers went cold. He turned, heart hammering against his ribs. Warren was still staring at the screen, but his reflection in the security glass, it wasn't moving. Daniel's stomach twisted. His fingers clenched into fists as he took a step back. Then, in the screen's reflection, his own face began to smile the end. Feel it. Liam pressed his thumb against the fingerprint scanner and waited. His apartment door clicked open. The sound should have been comforting, but tonight it wasn't. He stepped inside, kicked off his shoes, and tossed his jacket onto the couch. The place was silent, no music, no TV humming in the background. He liked it that way. At least he thought he did. Lately he wasn't sure about much of anything. It started with a rent-a-friend service. After the breakup, he'd found himself achingly alone. Not just in the way that meant quiet nights and solo meals, but in the way that made him feel invisible. He hadn't realized how much of his life had been built around his ex until he had to go to a movie alone, eat at their favorite restaurant alone, exist alone. That's when he found the ad. Need someone to talk to. A companion for coffee, walks, or movie nights. Rent a friend. 100% confidential. No commitments. It sounded pathetic, but he didn't care. He booked a trial session. That's how he met Owen. Owen was friendly, a little too eager, but harmless. The first outing was a simple coffee shop meetup. Then bowling, a walk in the park, a night at the arcade. It was easy. No awkward dating pressure, no emotional expectations, just company. For a while it helped, until the contract ended. And Owen didn't leave. The first time it happened, Liam brushed it off as coincidence. He was at the gym when he spotted Owen at the water station. They made eye contact. Owen beamed, waved enthusiastically, then jogged over. Liam, perfect timing, man. Let's spot each other. Liam hesitated. Oh, yeah, actually, I was just about to. I got you. Owen clapped him on the back, like they were old friends, like they'd been doing this for years. Liam shook it off. It was just a friendly gesture. But then it happened again. At work, at the cafe where he liked to read, at the bar he used to visit with his ex, Owen was always there. At first, Liam laughed about it. He even joked, "Dude, you're like a stray cat that won't go away." Owen laughed too, but there was something behind it. A slight delay, a hint of something wrong. "Of course," Owen said. "What are best friends for?" The words chilled him. He hadn't said that. He hadn't called Owen his best friend. A week later, Liam sat on his bed, phone in hand. His finger hovered over Owen's contact. He didn't remember saving his number, but there it was. Favorite contact. He scrolled up. Hundreds of messages. Some were casual. "Bowling tomorrow. You're a terrible liar, man. You love my jokes. Pick up your damn phone, idiot." Some were older. "Owen, dude, that trip to Miami was insane. Best weekend of my life. Remember when we pulled that all-nighter? College was brutal, bro. Can't believe we survived high school. You and me, best friends forever." Liam never went to Miami. Liam never pulled an all-nighter with Owen. Liam never knew Owen in high school. Heart pounding, he opened his email. More messages, photos, conversations dating back years. None of it was real. It was like someone had rewritten his entire past. The nightmares started after that. He woke up gasping in the dark, sweat soaked, his heart slamming against his ribs. Every night, a different version of the same terror. He'd be standing in his apartment, looking at framed photos on the walls, except every picture had changed. Owen. Owen at his birthday. Owen at his graduation. Owen standing next to him, smiling, arms around his shoulders. But he didn't remember any of it. One night, he ripped them all down. The next morning, they were back. Every single photo, with Owen. Liam ran to the bathroom, chest heaving. He gripped the sink, staring into the mirror. His reflection stared back, and then it blinked. A second too late, a cold crawling terror paralyzed him. "That's not me." A hand touched his shoulder. He whipped around. Owen, standing in his bathroom, smiling. "I told you," Owen said, his voice warm, gentle. "We've always been together." Liam shook his head violently. No, you're not real." Owen tilted his head. "If I wasn't real, why do you remember me?" Liam opened his mouth, stopped, because now he did. Owen had been there in college, hadn't he? They'd been friends for years, hadn't they? The memories flooded in. Real memories. Or were they? Owen leaned closer. "You look tired. Maybe you should rest." Liam's body sagged. He was so tired. Maybe he should just sleep. Maybe it would all be better in the morning. Morning sunlight poured through the blinds. Liam stretched, rubbing his face. He felt good, rested. He sat up, glancing around. The photos on the wall were perfect. His apartment was his. His phone vibrated. "Hey man, breakfast." Liam smiled. Owen was his best friend. He couldn't imagine life without him. He got dressed and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the city alive with movement. He spotted someone sitting alone at the cafe across the street. A young woman scrolling through an ad on her phone. Need someone to talk to, a companion for coffee, walks, or movie nights. Rent a friend, 100% confidential, no commitments. Liam felt something stir inside him. A smile stretched across his lips. He crossed the street. "Hey," he said warmly, "mind if I join you?" The cycle began again. The end. The first time Samuel noticed the man, he thought nothing of it. Just another late-night commuter slumped in his seat, lost in the lull of the subway car. But the third time, the fifth, the 10th, that's when the unease set in. The man never moved, never shifted, never even blinked. He sat rigid, hands clasped in his lap, staring straight ahead like a wax figure abandoned in an empty museum. Samuel had been a subway conductor for 8 years. He'd seen his share of weirdos, drunks passed out over their own vomit, men muttering to unseen enemies, once even a woman clipping her toenails onto the floor. But this was different. The man wasn't acting strange. He wasn't acting at all. No matter the time or the train, the passenger was always there. Always. On the night Samuel decided to say something, the platform was dead. Midnight trains were like that, silent, the fluorescent lights humming in the tunnels. The station reeked of damp concrete, old piss, and burnt metal. He exhaled and pushed the door open, stepping into the passenger car. There he was, third row from the back, hands folded. The same brown jacket, the same pale face, the same dark, hollowed-out eyes. Samuel swallowed. "Hey, buddy, last stop." The words barely left his mouth before the train shuddered. The lights flickered. His radio screeched with a burst of static so loud it sent a jolt down his spine. He winced, adjusting the volume. "Control, you copy." Nothing. He turned back to the man, unchanged. The train idled, waiting for the signal to continue. Outside, the tunnel yawned, black and endless, the kind of dark that swallowed sound. Samuel stepped closer. "Sir, you need to exit the train." The man sat still. Samuel leaned in, lowering his voice. "Can you even hear me?" And then the man turned his head, slow, mechanical, like his joints had rusted over. Samuel's stomach nodded. The passenger's lips didn't move, but his chest rose, fell, just slightly too fast. The air between them felt heavy, as if it had thickened with something dense and unseen. Samuel opened his mouth to demand, to question, to curse, but before he could, the emergency lights died. The train plunged into darkness. For one long, endless second, there was nothing, just the weight of the dark, thick and pressing. Then in the void, a whisper, Samuel, his name. The sound slithered from the intercom, stretching the syllables like a dying breath. Samuel stumbled backward. The train lurched, the lights snapped back, and the man was gone. Security checked the cameras, no sign of the man. They rewound the footage, watched frame by frame. At 12:57 a.m., the train had been empty, but Samuel had been there. He saw him. "You okay, man?" the guard asked, frowning at him through the monitors. Samuel nodded, but his skin crawled. That night, he barely slept. The next shift at 11:30 p.m., Samuel found Victor waiting at the break room vending machine. Victor had been with the subway for over 20 years, an old-timer who knew every tunnel, every schedule, every damn flickering light bulb in the system. "Hey," Victor said, stuffing his hands into his coat. He looked nervous. Samuel grabbed a coffee, rubbing at his eyes. "What's up?" Victor hesitated. Then, finally, "I heard you saw him." Samuel stiffened. Victor exhaled sharply through his nose. "You talked to him, didn't you?" Samuel set his coffee down, suddenly not thirsty. "What do you mean?" Victor's expression darkened. "You spoke to him," he said again, softer. Samuel's mouth felt dry. Victor glanced around, lowering his voice. "Then he's going to speak to you now." That night, Samuel sat behind the controls, heart hammering as the train rattled through the tunnels. He didn't want to look in the mirrors. Didn't want to check the security cams. Didn't want to turn his head because he knew what he would see. The tunnels rushed past. The hum of the tracks vibrated through his bones. At 12:45 a.m., the emergency intercom crackled to life. Static first, a slow, grinding hiss, then a voice, a deep, unnatural voice that made Samuel's skin feel too tight. Samuel, it wasn't human. He clenched the controls, swallowing the bile rising in his throat. The intercom buzzed, then whispered, "Let me off." His breath hitched. The voice didn't belong to Victor, didn't belong to control, didn't belong to anyone he knew. "Where?" Samuel rasped, throat dry. No answer. The train lurched. The overhead lights dimmed. Samuel gritted his teeth. "Who are you?" A beat. Then the intercom screamed. A burst of static loud enough to make Samuel slam his hands over his ears. His vision blurred. He gasped, jerking the brakes. The train shuddered, screeched, ground to a halt. Silence. Samuel panted, ears ringing. The darkness outside the tunnel loomed, vast and unmoving. Then, behind him, a breath, he turned. The man was standing in the control room. Close, too close. Samuel choked on a scream. The figure leaned in, pale lips near his ear. And in a voice like scraping metal it whispered, "You're sitting in my seat." The train doors slid open and Samuel woke up somewhere else. Somewhere dark. Somewhere deep beneath the city, where no trains ran and no people walked. Somewhere he had never seen before. And behind him, the tracks rumbled. A train was coming, and it wasn't stopping. The end. Anthony's eyes burned with exhaustion as he pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of the roadside motel. The long drive had drained him, and he wanted nothing more than a bed, a few hours of sleep, and a quiet morning before continuing his trip. The neon sign above the Restway Inn flickered, buzzing faintly in the still night. He sighed, rubbing his face, then grabbed his overnight bag and stepped into the lobby. A bored-looking receptionist sat behind the desk, scrolling through something on a cracked tablet. She barely glanced at him before pushing a register forward. "Just one night." "Yeah," Anthony murmured, scrawling his signature onto the paper. The woman reached under the desk and pulled out a tarnished brass key. "Room 407. Anthony took it without a second thought. The hallway smelled of musty carpet and stale air. Yellowed sconces lined the walls, casting sickly light on faded wallpaper. He found his room at the end of the hall. The key turned with a reluctant click, and he stepped inside. It looked normal. Beige walls, a stiff bed covered in a polyester comforter, a boxy old TV humming static before he flipped it to some late-night talk show. The dull murmur of the host's voice filled the silence. He tossed his bag onto the chair, kicked off his shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. A knock woke him. 3 sharp raps on the door. Anthony groaned. His mouth was dry, his limbs leaden. The TV was still on, though the host's lips moved without sound. Another knock. He staggered to the door and cracked it open. The receptionist stood in the hallway looking confused. "Sir, why are you in there?" Anthony frowned. "What?" She gestured toward the door. "That room hasn't been rented out in years." A slow, creeping chill spread down his spine. "That's not true," he said, forcing a laugh. "I checked in. You gave me the key." She shook her head. "No, sir, I didn't." Anthony turned back to the room. His bag sat on the chair, his jacket draped over it, his shoes by the door, the TV still playing the show he had left on. "Look," he said, stepping back, "my stuff is in there." The receptionist's voice was sharper now. "Sir, there's nothing in that room." A pause, then from inside a whisper. "That's not true." Anthony's breath hitched. It was his voice. He spun toward the doorway, but the door slammed shut in his face. A loud click. Locked. Anthony's heart pounded as he grabbed the knob and twisted. "Hey, open up." The receptionist's voice was muffled. "Sir, please calm down. My stuff is in there. My bag, my phone, everything." A long silence. Then, "There's nothing in that room," she repeated. Something wasn't right. His skin prickled with the overwhelming sense that the air had shifted. He pressed his ear against the door. From the other side, the TV clicked off. A pause. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming toward the door. His throat tightened. "Who's in there?" No response. Then his own voice, soft, amused. "Go away." Anthony's stomach dropped. He pounded the door again, harder this time. "Who the hell is in there? Open the door." Behind him, the receptionist was silent. He turned to her, but her face had changed. Her expression was blank, her eyes unfocused, like someone deep in a trance. Then, slowly, her lips parted. "Sir," she whispered, "we need to leave." The fluorescent lights flickered. The hallway seemed darker now, stretching longer than it should. A noise came from inside the room, scraping, fingernails dragging against wood. Anthony's pulse hammered in his ears. The scraping grew louder. Then, another knock. But this time it wasn't at the door. It came from inside the room. He felt something shift, something intangible, something wrong. The receptionist grabbed his arm. Her fingers were ice cold. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "you can't be here." "What?" "I don't know how you got in there, but you need to go. Now." Anthony's mind raced. None of this made sense. He looked down at the key still clutched in his hand. The number 407 was gone. The brass surface was blank. A deep, suffocating silence fell between them. And then, the door creaked open. Anthony's breath caught in his throat. A figure stood in the doorway. It was him, standing in the dim room, staring out at him. Anthony. The other him tilted his head slightly, his lips curling into a slow smile. Anthony stumbled backward. No, this is... His double step forward. Anthony could see now his face wasn't right. The mouth stretched too wide, the eyes hollow, empty. Something flickered in the darkness behind him. Something shifting, stretching, waiting. The other him lifted a hand and pressed a single finger to his lips. "Shush," it whispered. The door slammed shut again. Anthony turned and bolted. The receptionist ran with him, their footsteps pounding against the old carpet as the hallway stretched impossibly long. The air felt thick, wrong, like he was moving through something unseen. He didn't stop running until they burst into the lobby. The glass doors swung open, and suddenly, the night air hit him like a punch to the chest. He bent over, hands on his knees, gasping. The receptionist stood beside him, her face pale. He turned to her, words catching in his throat. "What the hell was that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly lifted a shaking hand and pointed. Anthony followed her gaze to the motel itself. His stomach twisted. The building was different. No lights, no neon sign, no glowing "Rest Way In." The windows were dark, hollow, the structure old, decayed, abandoned. The motel was a ruin, a cold, dead thing standing against the night. Anthony felt something pressing at the edges of his mind, a thought he didn't want to have. He turned the key over in his palm. It wasn't a key anymore. It was a strip of blank plastic. The receptionist's voice trembled. "Sir." His hands shook. She looked at him, her eyes dark and unreadable. "Where exactly did you sleep last night?" The wind picked up. The motel's skeletal frame groaned. Somewhere down the road, a distant sound echoed, a door creaking open. Anthony didn't turn around. He just ran. The end. Maya stepped onto the porch of the Caldwell estate, feeling the weight of the crisp night air pressing against her. The house was massive, an old Victorian with darkened windows that watched her like empty eyes. She had babysat plenty of times before, but something about this job felt different. Maybe it was the couple's strange urgency over the phone, or the unusually high payment she had been offered, double her usual rate. The door creaked open before she could knock. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell stood in the dim entryway. They were elegantly dressed, as if headed to some high society event, but both looked uneasy. Mrs. Caldwell's fingers twitched at the hem of her coat. Mr. Caldwell forced a smile, though it never reached his eyes. "Thank you for coming, Maya," he said, pressing a thick envelope into her hands. "Your payment up front." Maya blinked. "That's a lot." Mrs. Caldwell cut in. "We just have one rule," she said quickly. "Do not go into the nursery after midnight, no matter what you hear. Understand?" Maya hesitated. "Why?" Mrs. Caldwell's eyes flicked to the staircase. "Just don't." Then, without another word, they turned and left. The evening was uneventful. Oliver, the toddler, was already asleep in his crib when Maya peeked in on him. He was a tiny thing, barely 2 years old, his small body curled under a soft blanket. His nightlight cast warm golden stars along the walls. Satisfied, Maya retreated downstairs. She settled onto the couch and scrolled through her phone, half listening to the soft static of the baby monitor resting on the coffee table. Then at 11:43 p.m., a faint rustling sound crackled through the speaker. Maya frowned. She grabbed the monitor, watching the nursery feed. In the eerie glow of night vision, she saw Oliver lying still, exactly where she had left him. Then she noticed something strange, the timestamp in the corner. It read, "Yesterday, 11:43 p.m. Maya's stomach flipped. She blinked hard. There had to be a mistake, right? A glitch in the monitor. She switched it off and on. The timestamp remained. Another rustling noise, closer this time. A soft, wet cough. Her pulse pounded as she stared at the screen. Oliver was still there, but something was off. The crib's blanket looked different. Last time she checked, it had been tucked neatly around him. Now, it was slightly askew. Had he moved, or was this really last night's footage? The static deepened into something else, a low, rhythmic breathing. Maya's blood ran cold. That breathing was not Oliver's. Then movement, a shadow. It slid across the screen just beyond the crib, a tall, thin silhouette. Maya froze. Her breath hitched as the baby monitor crackled again. Then a whisper, low, guttural. "You weren't supposed to look." The monitor cut to static. Maya bolted upright. She had to check the nursery. Sprinting up the stairs, her heartbeat hammering in her ears, she threw open the nursery door and staggered back. The crib was empty, untouched. No blankets, no pillow, no child. The room smelled of dust and stale air, as if no one had been inside for weeks. Maya's head spun. She had seen Oliver, hadn't she? Hadn't she? The baby monitor crackled again, and Maya's shaking hands fumbled to raise it. The screen flickered back on, but this time, she wasn't looking into the nursery. She was looking into the living room, at herself, standing in the dark, holding the baby monitor. Her own reflection stared back, frozen in the grainy black and white feed. And behind her, a figure, tall, gaunt, grinning. Maya spun, sucking in a sharp breath, but the room behind her was empty. Then, the nursery door slammed shut. Maya screamed. She lunged for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. The monitor crackled again. She looked down. The screen was still showing her, still in the living room, still standing there. Except, her reflection was no longer alone. The figure was closer now, its elongated arms stretched toward her. Maya pounded on the door. "Let me out." A whisper slithered through the static. "You weren't supposed to look." The screen flickered. Then, darkness. The next morning, the Caldwells returned. The house was silent. Too silent. Mr. Caldwell set down his coat, glancing around. "Maya?" No response. Mrs. Caldwell walked to the nursery, gently pushing open the door. Inside, the crib sat undisturbed. Dust clung to the railings. It had been empty for years. On the coffee table, the baby monitor was still on. The screen was frozen, a single frame. Maya, standing in the nursery, her mouth open in a silent scream, her face pale, stretched in horror. Behind her, a shadow. Timestamp tonight, 11:43 p.m. The end. Lauren arrived at the house just before sunset. It was beautiful. Tall windows, warm wooden floors, and the kind of old-world charm that made it feel lived in rather than abandoned. The listing had been vague about its history, but she didn't care. She needed this weekend. Her job had been suffocating lately, her social life non-existent. A few days alone in a house like this, it was exactly what she needed to reset. She rolled her suitcase inside and closed the door behind her. The air smelled like dust and old wood. The furniture was antique, polished and eerily untouched. What struck her most, though, were the mirrors. There was one in every room. Tall, gilded ones leaning against the walls. Oval-shaped ones hanging above the fireplace. A grand floor-length mirror in the hallway, its glass warped with age. No matter where she stood, she could always see herself. Lauren swallowed. It was just decor, nothing weird. She turned away and started unpacking. That night, Lauren stood in the upstairs bathroom, brushing her teeth. She wasn't thinking about the mirrors until she glanced at herself and saw something off. She blinked. Her reflection blinked too. She turned her head to the side. The reflection followed, but just a second too late. A tight, cold feeling bloomed in her chest. She stepped closer, staring into her own eyes. She looked tired, stressed. Maybe she was just imagining things. Lauren exhaled, turned off the light, and left the bathroom. She made it 3 steps down the hall before the hairs on her arms rose. She turned back. The bathroom mirror was still lit. Her reflection was still standing there, watching her. Lauren's breath hitched. She flicked the light switch back on. The reflection snapped into place, perfectly normal. Her heart pounded. She closed the bathroom door. This house was old. The mirrors were old. Old glass warped right She forced herself to go to bed. The next morning, the mirrors felt closer. She could have sworn the long one in the hallway had been further from the stairs last night. Now she caught glimpses of herself at angles that shouldn't be possible. And the worst part, her reflection was getting slower. She waved a hand in front of one mirror. Her reflection lagged, just for a second. Not enough to prove something was wrong, just enough to make her stomach knot with unease. Lauren laughed nervously to herself. This is insane. Still, she turned one of the mirrors around, just in case. That night, she avoided looking at the mirrors altogether. It wasn't until she was getting ready for bed that she slipped. Just for a second, glancing in the bathroom mirror, she turned away. Then she saw it. Her reflection was still staring. It wasn't copying her at all. Lauren felt a scream claw up her throat. She spun back around. Her reflection snapped into place. Her hands trembled as she reached for the mirror, pressing her fingertips to the glass. It was cold, solid, normal. But when she looked into her own eyes, a strange thought whispered in her mind, "Is this still me?" She yanked her hand back and turned off the light. She refused to look at the mirror again. The next morning, Lauren woke up to something worse. One of the mirrors was missing. The large floor-length one from the hallway. Gone. In its place was a note, scrawled in uneven handwriting. "Let me in." Lauren's stomach dropped. Her first thought was that someone was in the house, but the doors were still locked. The windows untouched. Nothing else had moved, just the mirror. Her pulse pounded in her ears. No, 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 no. She forced herself to search the house, room by room. The mirror wasn't just missing. It was nowhere. It was like it had never existed. Lauren grabbed her bag. She was leaving. Now, she rushed through the house, barely noticing the shifting angles of the remaining mirrors. She felt them watching her, but she didn't look. Couldn't. She reached the front door and stopped. A single mirror remained near the entrance. She had no reason to look, but she did, and her reflection was already looking at her. It didn't copy her movements. It didn't mirror her fear. It smiled. Lauren choked on a gasp. She stumbled back, and the reflection stepped forward. For the first time, it moved first. The light above flickered. The house groaned around her. The air turned thick, like the whole place was inhaling. Lauren turned to run. She didn't make it. The next weekend, a new guest arrived at the rental house. Lauren, or the thing wearing her face, greeted them at the door, smiling, welcoming. Inside the house, the mirrors reflected nothing at all. Deep within the glass, unseen and unheard, something pounded desperately against the surface. But no sound escaped. The end. Kara turned the invitation over in her hands, running her thumb across the embossed lettering. Aunt Margaret's funeral, beloved sister, cherished mother, devoted aunt. The funeral was tomorrow. The address was unfamiliar. And the problem was, she didn't have an Aunt Margaret. Her mother had never mentioned one. No childhood memories stirred. No dim recollections of family gatherings. But the invitation bore her name. She should have ignored it, tossed it in the trash. Instead, she found herself staring at it well past midnight, unable to shake a creeping sense of obligation. She went. The funeral home stood in a secluded part of town, shrouded in a low, creeping mist. A carved wooden sign outside read, "Wakefield Memorial Chapel for those who are ready." The words left a strange pressure in her chest, but she ignored it. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies. almost suffocating. She stepped cautiously into the main chapel. Rows of mourners sat in stiff-backed pews, their heads bowed in silence. A few lifted their gazes as she entered. Recognition flickered in their eyes. Kara stiffened. She didn't know these people, did she? The open casket stood at the front of the room. Something in her gut twisted. The mourners watched her expectantly, their breaths held, as if waiting. The moment she reached the casket, she hesitated. Then she looked inside and saw herself. Kara's lifeless body lay nestled in silk, dressed in clothes she didn't own. Her hands were folded neatly over an obituary. Her name was printed across it. Kara Ellison, loving daughter, loyal friend, gone too soon. The date of death was today. Her breath caught, the air around her thickened, pressing inward. A tremor ran through her fingers as she reached out, then yanked her hand back. A light touch brushed her shoulder. She turned sharply. A frail woman with sunken eyes leaned in close, whispering, "She's awake." Kara stumbled backward. The whispers in the room multiplied, merging into an eerie hum. At the podium, the priest lifted his head, his solemn face twisted into a smile. The doors groaned as they shut behind her. The locks turned. No one had touched them. The murmurs in the room grew, low and melodic. Not grief, something else. Kara's breath came in short bursts. The mourners' faces weren't quite right, familiar yet blurred at the edges, as though her mind refused to fully process them. She turned back to the priest. His robes seemed heavier than they should be, fabric sagging like something unseen pulled at the threads. "You were laid to rest," he said, voice deep and unwavering. "You are not supposed to be here." Kara shook her head. No, this is a mistake." The priest tilted his head. "Then why did you come?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Why had she come? A chill unfurled in her gut. The mourners shifted again, bodies too slow, as if their movements lagged behind time itself. The frail woman stepped closer. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Kara snapped. "I'm alive." But the words faltered. A flicker of something gnawed at the back of her mind, picking apart her certainty. The priest opened a leather-bound book and flipped through its pages. Kara's stomach clenched. The pages were filled with photographs of her, snapshots of childhood birthdays, school days, moments she barely recalled. But as the pages turned, the images became unfamiliar. Places she had never been, people she had never met. Then a hospital bed, her own face, pale, eyes closed, tubes taped to her skin. Her mother sitting beside her, clutching her hand. The memories hit her like a tidal wave. Kara gasped, nearly collapsing. No, that wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Could it? The priest exhaled softly, pleased. "You are awake, but you were laid to rest. That must be corrected." The air shifted, thick and syrupy, dragging at her limbs. Kara turned toward the exit, but the room stretched, the doors suddenly too far away. She caught a glimpse of herself in a nearby mirror. Her reflection was delayed, half a second behind her real movement, as if it wasn't sure whether to follow. Terror clawed up her throat. The murmurs deepened. A mourner wept into her hands, rocking back and forth. "She's not supposed to be up," someone whispered. Kara's gaze snapped back to the casket. The body inside, her body opened its eyes. It didn't sit up. It didn't move. It just smiled. Something pulled at her, unseen hands dragging her back toward the casket. Her mind fractured. Images flooded her vision, memories that weren't hers. She had been here before, hadn't she? She clutched at her temples. "Stop it, I'm alive. I know I'm alive." But the truth wavered. The beeping of hospital monitors echoed in her head. The priest gestured toward the first pew. "Sit, child. The service must continue." She struggled, but the pull grew stronger. The whispers wrapped around her thoughts, a noose tightening. The walls breathed. The space between the pews twisted like liquid. She turned to the exit. Outside the funeral home, people were walking backward. The sky was the wrong color, a shade she had no name for. The clock on the wall ticked in reverse. She lunged for the door, and in a single blink, she was sitting. Not at the exit, in the front row. Her body was no longer in the casket. The priest nodded approvingly. The funeral proceeded. Kara's pulse slowed. Something was wrong. Hadn't she been running? No. That didn't seem right. Someone beside her leaned in close, their voice a soft hush. It's time to say goodbye. She parted her lips, trying to respond, but she didn't remember what she was about to say. The priest adjusted his robes, cleared his throat, and the eulogy began. The end. The underground train station was dead quiet at this hour. Joel leaned back in his chair, watching the live security feed from the platform. The last train of the night would arrive soon, and then his shift would be over. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't mind. The night shift was dull but easy. No drunk commuters, no rowdy teenagers, just an empty station and a few stragglers catching the last ride home. Still, one rule puzzled him. The last train must always leave with the exact number of passengers counted at entry. He thought it was a joke at first, some weird bureaucratic train rule, but the other guards took it seriously. Joel pulled up the station log. 6 passengers entered tonight. He flipped through the cameras. A few people sat on the benches, staring at their phones. Others paced near the platform's edge, waiting. Through the intercom, a static-tinged voice spoke. Last train arriving. Do the count, Joel. He nodded to himself, clicking through the feeds again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The train's headlights pierced the tunnel darkness. A metallic screech filled the station as it slowed to a stop. The doors hissed open. Joel counted as each person stepped inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The doors slid shut. The train pulled forward. Job done. Then, just as he was about to close the monitor, something flickered on the screen. Someone else was on the platform. A figure stood near the edge, motionless. A black coat, hood pulled low, face hidden. Joel frowned. He knew he hadn't missed anyone. His stomach tightened. He rewound the footage. The platform had been empty when the train arrived. No one else was there. He played it again. The 6 passengers got on. The doors closed. Then the figure appeared. Not from the stairwell, not from the hallway, not from the shadows. One frame, the platform was empty. The next frame, the hooded figure was just there. Joel's skin prickled. He played the footage frame by frame. Still nothing, no entry, no movement. Then as the train departed, the figure turned its head toward the camera. The station lights flickered. The radio on his desk crackled with static. A whisper crawled through the speaker. You saw me. Joel flinched, his breath catching in his throat. The static faded, and the station fell silent again. The lights steadied. The radio was dead air. Maybe just a glitch. Maybe. Then the radio hissed again. You're counted too. Joel's hands felt cold. He turned back to the monitor. The figure was still there. That was impossible. The train was gone. The platform should be empty. Yet on the grainy black and white screen, the hooded figure remained, still, waiting. Joel flipped to the live feed. His stomach dropped. The figure was closer to the camera now. The station lights dimmed. Shadows stretched unnaturally. Joel's breath came in short. ragged bursts. His fingers hesitated over the radio. He needed to call someone, anyone. Then the screen glitched. The figure twitched forward in a single jerking movement. Then again, closer each time. The lights in the station shut off. Joel's heart pounded in his chest. The emergency lights flickered on. He grabbed the flashlight from his desk and stood. His legs felt unsteady. He had to check the platform. His footsteps echoed eerily as he made his way down the dim corridor. The platform stretched out before him, empty. No sign of the hooded figure, but something felt wrong. The air was heavy, too quiet. Joel's fingers tightened around the flashlight. Maybe the cameras glitched. Maybe. Then, just behind him, a deep breath. Joel turned so fast he nearly dropped the flashlight. Nothing, just the empty tracks stretching into darkness. Then, over the station's radio speakers, "You saw me." His stomach clenched, the flashlight flickered. "Now you're counted too." The lights cut out completely. Joel gasped. The darkness was suffocating. His ears strained for sound, anything. Then, a glow in the distance. The train. It was pulling into the station, but that wasn't right. The last train had already left. The doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. Inside, the compartments were dark, except for the rows of seats which weren't empty. Figures sat in every row, shadowed, unmoving. Joel's legs felt locked in place. He stepped backward, but his feet wouldn't move. His body wasn't his anymore. His legs carried him forward, into the train. The doors hissed shut behind him. The train began to move. Joel turned wildly, looking for an exit, a window, anything. The passengers around him sat perfectly still. Then, one by one, they began to turn their heads toward him. Their faces were hidden under dark hoods, but Joel could feel them watching. A breath of cold air slid across the back of his neck. Joel swallowed hard. He turned slowly. The last row of the train was empty, except for the very last seat. The hooded figure sat there, waiting. Joel's chest tightened. He reached for the emergency call button, but the train shot into the tunnel. The lights flickered out. The security booth monitors blinked back to life. On the screens, the station appeared normal again. A new security guard sat in Joel's chair, sipping coffee, starting his shift. The radio crackled. The last train must always leave with the exact number of passengers counted. The new guard clicked through the feeds. All clear. Then his brow furrowed. The live feed showed something wrong. A hooded figure stood on the platform, perfectly still, waiting for the next person to notice. The end. Jack pressed send on his last email of the night, stretching his arms as the office lights dimmed around him. The floor was nearly silent now, just the faint hum of computers left on standby, the distant murmur of the city outside. He checked the time, 11:48 p.m. Too late again. The others had left hours ago, but he hadn't even noticed. That was happening more lately. Time slipping through his fingers, his mind lost in the monotony of spreadsheets and reports. He had been getting home so late these days, barely recalling his own apartment except in glimpses between alarms and cold morning coffee. A soft ding sounded from his monitor. New email, company announcement. Jack rubbed his eyes, sighing. Probably some late-night memo from corporate. He clicked it open. Subject reminder. No one is allowed on floor 14 after hours. Jack frowned. What the hell? The building only had 13 floors. He had worked here for 3 years. There was no floor 14. He turned his chair toward the office windows, gazing at the distant skyline. The reflection in the glass showed his empty office behind him, endless rows of vacant cubicles. No movement, no sign of life. Yet for a moment he swore he saw something shift in the reflection. A dark smear where there shouldn't be one. The unease had already set in. Slowly he stood up, grabbed his coat, and headed for the elevator. The stainless steel door slid open, revealing the familiar sterile glow of the elevator interior. Jack stepped in, pressing the button for the lobby. But then he saw it. Right beneath the 13, where there had always been nothing but smooth metal, a new button had appeared. 14. Jack's breath caught in his throat. His fingers hovered over it. This isn't real, and yet it was there, lit up, waiting. A rational mind would have ignored it, walked away, left the building and never spoken of it again. But curiosity is louder than fear. Jack pressed 14. The elevator doors slid shut. The cabin lurched upward. He watched the digital display. 10, 11, 12, 13. A long pause. Then 14. The doors opened. The office was the same. The cubicles, the desks, the flickering computer monitors. It was identical to the floor below, except for the silence. Jack stepped forward, his shoes scuffed against the carpet, disturbing a fine layer of dust. He turned in a slow circle, his pulse quickening. This floor hadn't been touched for years, and yet it was his office. Jack walked past cubicles where familiar nameplates had once been shiny and new, now corroded, rusted. Chairs sat askew, abandoned in mid-motion. Computer screens were dark except for faint pulsing light patterns like breathing. He took another step. The air here was stale, thicker somehow, pressing down on him. Then he saw it. His desk. It was exactly the same, down to the coffee stain on the corner of his mouse pad. The pen cup slightly tilted. The sticky notes faded but still legible. And on top of it, a single folder, labeled with his name. Jack swallowed hard. His fingers trembled as he picked it up, flipping it open. In photographs, black and white security footage. A timestamp, tomorrow night. Jack stared. The images showed him, sitting at this very desk, unmoving. The next photo, him again. Hours passed on the timestamp, but he never moved. Just sat there staring at the screen. Then, at 3:33 a.m., the final image. His head snapped up, his face twisted in pure terror. The image was blurred, distorted, like the camera had glitched out trying to capture whatever had been in front of him. Jack's breath came faster, his pulse thundered in his ears. Then, his phone buzzed. Incoming call. Jack tomorrow. Jack's blood turned to ice. His thumb hovered over the screen, shaking. Then against every rational instinct, he answered. The line was silent, then static. Then his own voice, whispering, "Don't look behind you." Jack's stomach dropped. A shadow flickered in his computer monitor. Something moved, a shape shifting behind him. His breath stilled. Cold air pressed against the back of his neck. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. His own voice echoed in his head, "Don't look." But his body betrayed him. He turned. Nothing was there. Nothing but the empty cubicles, the layers of dust, the impossible stillness. His mind screamed, "Get out! Now!" Jack sprinted for the elevator. He could hear something now, a distant sound like footsteps. Not from behind him, from everywhere. From the walls, the ceiling. The computers began flickering to life, one by one, their screens flashing incomprehensible black and white images. Jack slammed his hand on the elevator button. Come on," a distant voice, his own, whispered from the speakers. "You shouldn't have come here." The door slid open. He lunged inside. The ride down was agonizingly slow. The doors finally opened. Jack stumbled forward, panting. Then he froze. He was not in the lobby. He was back in the office, back at his desk. His computer screen flickered, a new email pinged. Reminder, no one is allowed on floor 14 after hours. His phone vibrated. Incoming call Jack tomorrow. Jack's monitor reflection moved, but this time he wasn't the one moving. The end. Emma had spent 14 months working from home. 14 months of waking up at 8:55 a.m., rolling out of bed, and logging in just in time for the daily meetings. She hadn't worn real pants in weeks. The days blurred, filled with endless emails, muted microphones, and the occasional fake laugh at a manager's bad joke. Today was no different. The meeting invite popped up at exactly 9 a.m. Marketing Sync, weekly update, host. Monica, senior marketing lead. Participants, Jason HR, Luis Analytics, Mark Sales, Emma Branding, and a few others. Emma sighed and clicked join meeting. Her screen filled with familiar faces. Jason, half listening while scrolling on his phone. Monica, already mid-sentence about Q1 targets. Luis, nodding absent-mindedly. Emma barely paid attention as she adjusted her webcam, shifting in her chair to get comfortable. Her own video feed appeared in the bottom right corner, and that's when she noticed something off. At first, it was subtle, a half-second delay between her movements and the reflection on screen. She blinked. Her reflection blinked just a little too late. She tilted her head. The other Emma hesitated, only for a fraction of a second before mirroring her. Her stomach tightened, probably internet lag. Zoom calls were always a little glitchy. She waved a hand. There was another tiny delay. Her eyes darted to the others on the call. They all moved normally. Only her feed had the strange delay. Emma frowned, sitting up straighter. Maybe her webcam settings were off. She clicked over to video settings, expecting to find a bandwidth warning or resolution issue, but her camera settings were fine. And then, her reflection stopped mimicking her entirely. Her fingers twitched. Her screen self didn't move. Instead, the other Emma tilted her head, a slow, unnatural movement, like a marionette on invisible strings. Then it smiled, not a polite professional smile, not even a nervous, awkward one. It was wide, too wide. Emma's stomach twisted into a knot. She forced herself to breathe, to keep calm. Maybe it was a screen freeze. Maybe Zoom had bugged out. She reached for her mouse, and the call disconnected. Her laptop screen went black. The Zoom window vanished. Her desktop flickered back, followed by a familiar ping, a new chat notification from unknown. Let me in. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The room suddenly felt too quiet. The soft hum of her laptop fan was the only sound. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad, hesitant. She clicked open the Zoom settings again. Her webcam was off. It had been off the entire time. A cold shiver rippled through her spine. If her camera was off, who or what had been on the call? Her laptop flickered. The Zoom application reopened on its own. Emma's pulse hammered in her ears. Her face reappeared in the bottom corner, except it wasn't her. The other Emma sat motionless, eyes locked onto the camera, watching, waiting. Emma's breath quickened. She moved her hand. The reflection didn't. Instead, the other Emma slowly raised her own hand and pressed it against the inside of the screen. A whisper crackled through Emma's speakers, distorted but unmistakably her own voice. Let me in. Emma slammed the laptop shut. Darkness. Silence. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She sat frozen, gripping the edges of her chair, staring at the closed laptop as if it might burst open. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. The apartment felt suffocatingly still. Her reflection had never moved on its own before. It was just a glitch. It had to be. She exhaled, trying to shake the unease from her chest. Slowly, cautiously, she opened the laptop again. The screen was black. Her Zoom window was gone. For a brief moment, she let out a shaky laugh. Maybe it had been a stress-induced hallucination. Then her screen blinked on. A single browser tab was open. A live Zoom call. She wasn't in it, but someone else was. Her own video feed. And the other Emma was staring directly into the camera, her lips parted. And this time she spoke aloud, her voice crawling from the speakers, drenched in static. "You shouldn't have done that." 6. The knock. Emma shoved her chair back, her body rigid with fear. A new message popped up in the chat. From unknown. Knock, knock. Her breath hitched. A soft knock came from the front door. Emma whipped her head toward the entrance of her apartment. Another knock. Slow, deliberate. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, fumbling to open her security app. The front door camera loaded. The hallway outside was empty. Then, a shadow moved at the edge of the screen, and a face emerged from the darkness. Her own. Emma choked back a scream. The other her stood in the hallway, staring directly into the door camera. She raised a hand and knocked. 1, 2, 3. Then, smiling, she leaned in too close, until her nose pressed against the camera lens. The security feed glitched. Emma's phone vibrated. A new Zoom invite. From Emma, you. Join now. Her screen glitched again. The other Emma's lips moved. The voice, cold and identical to hers, whispered from the speakers. "Let me in." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. The invite button flickered, a countdown timer beginning to tick. Accept or decline. Her fingers hovered. She should decline. She should slam the laptop shut, unplug it, throw it out the window. But deep down she knew it wouldn't matter. Her other self was already here, watching, waiting, knocking, and soon, one way or another, she'd be let in. The end. Derek Grayson had driven long nights before, but this road, this one wasn't right. The shortcut had popped up on his GPS around 2:30 a.m., a clean diagonal slicing through the usual truck-clogged highways. Save 15 minutes it promised. He took it. That was an hour ago. The same two-lane blacktop stretched endlessly ahead, unbroken by intersections, exits, or even mile markers. The asphalt was too perfect. No cracks, no debris, no roadkill. Just the dull glow of his headlights on the yellow dividing lines, stretching forever. He checked the dashboard. Gas tank full. That wasn't possible. The clock blinked 2:47 a.m., the same time it had shown since he got on this road. Derek clenched the wheel, glancing at his phone. The GPS screen jittered like an old VHS tape, the glowing blue route rerouting, rerouting, rerouting. He flicked his headlights to high beams, scanning the horizon. No turns, no signs, no civilization. His fingers curled tighter over the wheel. What the hell is this road? Then his phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. Don't get out of the car. A cold pressure settled over his chest. The air outside seemed thicker, heavier. He hadn't seen a single car in over an hour, but the strangest thing was how familiar it all felt. That feeling only got worse when he saw the house. A small, lonely structure stood to the right of the road, nestled in the darkness. A porch light flickered, casting weak illumination over a woman standing at the door. She was waving at him. Derek's foot slammed the brakes. The truck lurched to a stop at the edge of the driveway. The woman stepped forward, not cautious, not nervous, like she knew him. She smiled, softly, sadly. You always stop here. Derek's breath stalled in his throat. Always. He stared at her, brown hair in a loose ponytail, bare feet on the wooden porch. Early 40s, maybe late 30s, but there was something about her eyes, something heavy, a sick weight pressed into his gut. Do I know you? His voice cracked in the silence. The woman tilted her head, and you always forget why. A new wave of nausea rolled through him. His phone vibrated again. He snatched it up. Stay inside. Do not talk to her. Derek looked from the screen to the woman, throat tightening. His truck's radio crackled to life, static washing over the speakers before a voice, a whisper emerged. You need to remember. His hands clenched the wheel. Remember what? A shadow moved behind the woman. Derek's breath hitched. The curtain in the window behind her shifted. A dark outline pressed against the glass. Watching him, his stomach twisted. He checked the road behind him. Black emptiness. But he couldn't turn around. He tried that earlier, hadn't he? No matter which way he drove, it always led back here. The woman stepped down from the porch. Derek hit the lock button on his door. Her bare feet crunched on gravel. Closer now. His phone buzzed again. He forced his gaze down. You're not ready yet. What does that mean? Derek's pulse hammered in his ears. He forced himself to look at her, to search for recognition in her face. You're lying, he whispered. I've never been here before. The woman shook her head. Yes, you have. Another flicker of movement inside the house. The dark figure pressed closer to the window. A headache split behind Derek's eyes. A memory. Him standing on that porch, talking to her. Night after night. The same road, the same words, the same mistake. His stomach turned. Who's inside? His voice barely came out. The woman's lips parted, but before she could answer, his phone buzzed again. Derek didn't want to look at it. He did anyway. A photo attachment. With shaking hands, he opened it. A picture of himself, standing on the porch beside her. His own expression was blank. His eyes were hollow, his posture unnatural, like a puppet at rest. Derek choked on his breath. His hand jerked to the ignition, twisting the key hard. The engine roared to life. The woman stopped walking. Derek's foot slammed the gas. The truck's tires screeched, gravel spitting from the wheels as it ripped forward. In the mirror, the woman didn't chase him. She only watched. The porch light flickered once and vanished into darkness. Derek's chest heaved as he barreled down the road. Faster, faster. The trees blurred past. His knuckles ached against the wheel. He drove for 10 minutes, then 20, then 30. Then he saw it. His foot slammed the brakes. The house. The porch light flickered. The woman stood at the door, waving. Derek's body went rigid. His pulse pounded behind his eyes. No. No. His phone buzzed. He already knew what it would say. He looked anyway. You always stop here, and you always forget why. His grip trembled against the wheel. Something inside him cracked. Derek slammed the gear shift into reverse. He spun the truck around, tires shrieking against pavement. He gunned the gas, heart racing. Faster this time, no stopping. The road whipped past. The wind howled against his windows. The truck's engine rumbled like a wild animal. 10 minutes, 20, 30. His stomach lurched. He hit the brakes. The house, waiting. Derek's head dropped against the steering wheel. It's never gonna let me go. His phone buzzed one last time. His hands shook as he lifted it. A final text. You have to remember. The porch light flickered. The woman stepped down. Derek felt his fingers release the wheel. His truck door clicked open. He wasn't sure if he moved on his own or if something pulled him. last thing he saw before stepping outside was the dashboard clock blinking. 2:47 a.m. The road stretched endlessly, waiting for him to forget all over again. The end. Nathan woke up to the familiar weight of his wife Laura beside him and the morning sun streaming through the blinds. It was an ordinary morning in their quiet suburban neighborhood until he looked out the window and saw the house next door. It was new, pristine white with blue shutters, its manicured lawn stretched out like a perfect, untouched canvas. Nathan blinked, heart thumping unevenly. He'd lived here for years. He knew every inch of the street, every familiar crack in the pavement, every house, and this house hadn't been there yesterday. He shook Laura awake. "Look at that." She squinted sleepily at him. "Look at what?" "The house next door." Laura peered out the window, her brow furrowing. "What about it?" "It wasn't there yesterday," Nathan said, his voice tight with confusion. "I'm telling you it's new." Laura laughed softly, rubbing her eyes. "You're being weird. That house has always been there. The Morgans live there." Nathan's stomach twisted. "No, Laura, I swear that house wasn't there." She kissed his cheek. "You must have had a bad dream. Come on, let's have breakfast." Nathan forced a smile but couldn't shake the dread pooling in his gut. He pulled on a pair of shoes and headed outside, needing proof that something was wrong. On the street, he spotted Mr. Dugan watering his lawn. Nathan jogged over, his pulse thrumming in his ears. "Morning, Mr. Dugan," Nathan said. "You notice anything strange about that house next door?" The old man barely glanced up. "The Morgans' place." Nathan's mouth went dry. "Yeah, but wasn't there? I mean, did it always look like that?" Mr. Dugan chuckled. "You feeling all right? You ask me this every week." Nathan shook his head. "No, I don't. I'm telling you, that house wasn't there yesterday." Mr. Dugan shrugged. "Maybe get some rest. You look pale." Nathan stepped back onto his porch, heart pounding. He stared at the house, feeling its presence press down on him like a weight. The front door opened, and a man and a woman stepped out. They waved. Nathan squinted, his breath catching. The couple looked exactly like him and Laura. Same hair, same features, same clothes. He stumbled back inside. "What's wrong?" Laura asked, pouring a cup of coffee. "Did you see them? The couple on the porch?" Laura peered out the window. "Just the Morgans." "Nathan, are you okay?" "They look exactly like us," Nathan whispered. "Same hair, same clothes. It's not right." Laura placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Maybe you're stressed. You should stay home today." Nathan nodded numbly, the walls of his house feeling closer, more suffocating. He spent the day pacing, peeking through the blinds. Every time he looked, the doppelgangers stood on their porch, staring back at him. That evening, Nathan watched them wave again, their smiles too wide, too knowing. When he turned away, he found Laura watching him, concern shadowing her face. "They're not real," he whispered. "They're pretending to be us." Laura's eyes flickered. "Nathan, you're scaring me. They're just our neighbors." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "They're not. This isn't real. That house wasn't there. I know it wasn't." Laura took his hand gently. "Let's go for a walk. Get some fresh air." Reluctantly, Nathan agreed. They walked in silence, the world around him feeling blurred, unreal. As they passed the house, he couldn't resist looking up. The couple stood on the porch, watching them, unblinking. Nathan's grip tightened around Laura's hand. "Let's go back." That night, Nathan barely slept. He tossed and turned, eyes burning holes themselves into the ceiling, waiting for morning. When the sun finally rose, he jolted awake and rushed to the window, his breath froze in his throat. His house was gone. The space where it had stood was now an empty lot, the grass perfectly trimmed, not a trace of his home in sight. Nathan stumbled outside, bare feet on cool pavement, panic flooding his veins. He spun around, searching for anything familiar. Instead, he found the doppelgangers standing on the porch of their house. They wore matching pajamas, just like he and Laura had the night before. "Where's my house?" Nathan shouted. "Where's Laura?" The other Nathan smiled, a cold, hollow expression that made his skin crawl. "Your house has always been gone." The other Laura chimed in, her voice eerily familiar. "You've always been our neighbor, Nathan." "No," he shook his head violently. "You're lying. My house was right there. Laura was with me." The couple exchanged a glance as if sharing a private joke. "You should come inside, Nathan." The other Nathan said, "We've got coffee brewing. It's just like home." Nathan backed away, his breath ragged. "This isn't happening. You're not real." "Are you sure?" The other Laura asked sweetly. "Look around. This neighborhood's always been here. We've always been here. You're the one who doesn't belong." Nathan turned and ran, barefoot and desperate, down the street. Every house looked identical, their windows dark and empty. No movement, no sound, only an eerie, oppressive silence. He rounded the corner and found himself standing back in front of the new house. The other Nathan and Laura stood there, waving again. "How did I get here?" he whispered, sinking to his knees. "You've always been here," the other Nathan said softly. "You're home now." Nathan's vision blurred. He felt himself fading, slipping away as if he were unraveling thread by thread. He tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the suffocating silence of the neighborhood. Somewhere, deep inside, he realized he'd never belonged here at all. The last thing he saw was his own face, smiling down at him from the porch. The end. The first thing the journalist noticed was the emptiness. The lot stretched wide and featureless, a perfect expanse of concrete where Westfield Elementary was supposed to be. A school that had existed for over 50 years, with a playground that smelled like sun-warmed plastic, with classrooms where teachers droned on about multiplication tables and state capitals. Gone. Not destroyed, not abandoned, just erased. No rubble, no foundation scars, no lingering artifacts of a schoolyard life, stray pencils, gum wrappers, forgotten jackets. Just a smooth surface, untouched by time or memory, and yet people remembered it. Mrs. Holloway, a mother of two, swore she had dropped her son Theo off that morning. But when I came back for pickup, she whispered, hands trembling over an untouched cup of coffee, there was nothing here. No other parents, no teachers, just a parking lot. Her voice wavered. I asked people on the street, but they looked at me like I was crazy. She wasn't alone. 17 other parents had come forward, all insisting their children had attended Westfield that morning. None of them remembered picking their kids up, and yet, when pressed for details, something broke down in their recollections. Of course, I saw Theo this morning, Mrs. Holloway said, blinking rapidly, but I can't remember what he was wearing. Another mother hesitated. Did I pack lunch for Mia today? The memories had gaps, hollow spaces where certainty should be. The journalist had seen inconsistencies before, witnesses who misremembered details, trauma victims whose minds blurred the truth. But not like this. This was deliberate. When they checked official records, things got worse. No documents listed Westfield Elementary as an active institution. The school district's records had no mention of it. Calls to local government offices met with confusion or polite dismissal. Even Google Maps had erased it. A street view from a month ago showed the school right where it should be. But now, when they checked again, the most recent update showed nothing, as if Westfield had never existed at all. That night, the journalists sat in the dim glow of their laptop, flipping through an old yearbook borrowed from the town library. At first, everything seemed normal. Principal's message, club photos, faculty portraits. Then they turned to the student pages. Blank. No faces, no names. Just empty white spaces where children should have been. A cold pressure settled in their chest. Something was scrubbing the school from history. And then, the phone rang. An unlisted number. They hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then a child's whisper. Please tell them we're still here. The journalist's breath hitched. Who is this? They asked, gripping the phone tighter. The voice cracked, almost sobbing. We're still here, but they won't let us leave. A soft rustling in the background. Then a second voice, deeper. Wrong. You shouldn't be looking. The line went dead. The journalist sat frozen, the phone pressed to their ear. The air in the apartment felt suddenly too still, like the moment before a storm. Had the students ever left the school? Or had they been left inside? Trapped somewhere that no longer existed, that no one remembered. Their hands shook as they turned back to the yearbook, flipping frantically through its pages. No faces, no names, no students. But then, on the very last page, something new. A message scrawled in faint pencil across the bottom. Don't forget us. The journalist returned to the empty lot the next morning. The nothingness stretched before them, vast and absolute. But today, standing on the edge of it, they noticed something different. The pavement wasn't just empty. It was too clean. No cracks, no weathering, no stray weeds pushing through, like it had been laid down recently, like something had been buried beneath it. A wave of nausea rolled through them. They weren't just erased, they were sealed away, trapped, still there. A chill crawled up the journalist's spine as they bent down, placing a palm against the concrete, and froze. The surface beneath their hand was warm, like body heat, like breath. They yanked their hand back, heart pounding. Something shifted beneath the pavement, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration. A voice whispered at the edge of their hearing. Please tell them we're still here. The journalist staggered back. They turned in a frantic circle, scanning the street. But everything looked normal. Cars driving past, people walking by, no one reacting. They were alone. No one else could hear it. Their chest tightened. How could an entire school, 300 students and faculty, just disappear? And why was no one fighting for them? No protests, no petitions, just confused parents who, slowly, day by day, were forgetting their own children ever existed. They needed proof, something tangible, something no one could deny. With shaking hands, they pulled out their phone and snapped a photo of the empty lot. The screen flashed, then a notification, photo cannot be saved. Their stomach twisted. They tried again, error, file not found. Their fingers clenched around the device. It wasn't just the school that was disappearing. It was everything tied to it. And now, they were tied to it too. That night, the journalists didn't sleep. They kept the yearbook beside them, fingers tracing over the faint words on the last page. Don't forget us. As long as someone remembered, the school still existed. The moment no one did, it would be gone forever. At 3:12 a.m., their phone rang, their blood ran cold. They let it ring, the voicemail icon blinked, shaking, they pressed play. At first static, then breathing, then a child's voice, trembling. Please, a pause, then more voices, layered, overlapping. Please, tell them we're still here. Then another sound, a deep, grinding rumble. The journalist bolted upright. The noise wasn't from the phone, it was coming from outside. They rushed to the window. The empty lot was changing. The pavement was sinking, slowly, impossibly, like something beneath it was moving. And then they saw them. Hands, fingers, small and desperate, pushing through the cracks, trying to get out, trying to be remembered. The journalist's breath came in ragged gasps. They grabbed the yearbook, clutching it like a lifeline. I remember, they whispered. The fingers trembled. Then, one by one, they disappeared, and the pavement smoothed over, like they had never been there at all, like they had never existed. The journalist clutched the yearbook tighter. They had to remember, because if they didn't, no one would. And then they'd be next. The end. Eric was brushing his teeth when he heard the laughter from the living room. His roommates, Miles and Darren, were joking about something. Voices easy, relaxed. Then, in the lull between words, Eric heard Darren say it. Yeah, Jason always leaves his shit everywhere. Eric frowned. He leaned out of the bathroom. Who? The laughter cut off like a blade had sliced through it. Miles looked at him, then at Darren. Dude, Jason. Eric wiped his mouth, heartbeat quickening. Who the hell is Jason? They laughed again, but this time it sounded different. Not amused, nervous. Our third roommate, Darren said, the guy you moved in with. Eric felt something cold grip the back of his neck. No, he said, it's just us. Darren exchanged a glance with Miles, something flickering between them. Then Miles pulled out his phone. Dude, what are you talking about? Jason's in the group chat. Eric stepped closer. Miles turned the screen toward him. And there it was. Lol. Miles, you're a mess. Who ate my leftovers? Be back late. Eric's chest tightened. That name hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. But now, it was everywhere. Eric barely slept. The apartment suddenly felt too big, too full. He lay in bed, listening. At 2:43 a.m., he heard footsteps. Soft, measured, moving from the kitchen to the hallway. He held his breath. The floor creaked just outside his door. He waited for a knock, or for someone to call his name. But nothing. The footsteps simply stopped. After a full minute, Eric forced himself up. His mouth felt dry as sandpaper as he walked to the door. His hand trembled on the doorknob before he finally turned it. The hallway was empty, but there was something strange. The closet at the end of the hall, Jason's supposed room, was open, just slightly. Eric swallowed hard and reached for the handle. He yanked the door wide. The closet was completely empty. No clothes, no boxes, nothing. Jason didn't live here, but everyone thought he did. The next morning, Eric checked the lease. Jason's name was there. His signature next to Eric's. His clothes were in the laundry. His charger was plugged into the wall. Eric sat on the couch, running his hands through his hair, staring at the phone in his lap. In the group chat, Jason had sent another message. Jason, hey Eric, you good man? Eric's skin prickled. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a mistake. Jason was inside this apartment. Eric started checking the mirrors, because that's where he first saw it, the shadow. It happened in the bathroom. He was drying his face when, in the steamy mirror, he saw someone standing behind him. He turned fast, heart hammering, but the bathroom was empty. Yet, in the fogged-up glass, there were fingerprints on the mirror. Not his. That night, Eric heard whispers. Not full words, just the sound of someone talking to themselves. Miles, Darren. He crept toward the sound, footsteps silent. He reached Miles' door first. The whispers weren't coming from there. He moved to Darren's room. Not from there either. The closet door at the end of the hall was open again. The whispering stopped. Eric's breath shuddered, and then from inside the closet he heard a single inhale. Someone, something, was breathing. Eric backed away, fast. He grabbed his keys, his jacket. His phone buzzed as he reached the front door. "Jason, where are you going, man?" Eric didn't sleep at home. He crashed at a friend's place, heart still racing. By morning, he'd convinced himself it was exhaustion, a prank, something. But when he returned to the apartment, everything was worse. The fridge had a new photo, a printed Polaroid stuck under a magnet, 3 guys standing in front of the apartment. Miles, Darren, and Jason. Eric wasn't in it. His stomach lurched, and then his phone buzzed again. "Jason, dude, stop messing around. You're freaking everyone out." Eric's head pounded. "I don't know you." The second he hit send, something shifted in the apartment. The lights flickered, a sound, something heavy moving. And then, Darren's voice. "Hey, who are you texting?" Eric turned, gripping his phone so hard his knuckles ached. Darren's eyes flicked to the screen, then his face twisted in confusion. Who the hell is Eric? The air collapsed around him. Miles walked in from the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Why is it so dark in here?" He glanced at Eric, then at Darren, and then at Eric again. "Wait, who is this guy?" Eric's lungs wouldn't work. He stumbled back, shaking his head. No, it's me. I live here." Darren's face was blank. Miles' jaw clenched, and then from the hallway a voice, a familiar voice. "Guys, relax." Eric turned. A figure stood in the dim light of the hallway. He had Eric's face. His voice was Eric's voice, and he was smiling. There always has to be 3. Eric's body wouldn't move. His legs felt locked, his throat useless. The other him stepped forward, tilting his head slightly, eyes hungry. "Don't fight it," Jason whispered. The lights flickered again, then darkness. And when the lights came back, there were only 3 people in the apartment. Jason, Miles, Darren, and none of them remembered anyone else. The end. Sean stood at the front doors of the mall waiting for them to slide open. They didn't. He waved his hand in front of the sensor. Nothing. Frowning, he stepped back, glancing outside. The parking lot, dimly lit by the streetlights, was empty. No straggling cars, no late-night janitor finishing up. Just an endless vacant stretch of asphalt leading into the dark. He pressed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Sean. Power's out. Exit doors aren't working. Static. A flicker overhead." The entire mall went dark. For a long moment, silence filled the space, deeper than it should have been. Then the dull red glow of emergency exit signs blinked to life, casting long shadows across the empty hallways. Sean turned. The stores were all locked, their security grates pulled down. The mall was abandoned, still as a grave. Then footsteps echoed from above. His head snapped up to the 2nd floor. His flashlight beam wavered over the glass railing. Nothing moved. A sharp crackle erupted over the intercom. A voice. His voice. "Attention all shoppers. The doors have been locked. The last guest must leave now." Sean's blood went cold. His throat worked soundlessly. That was his voice, but it hadn't come from his mouth. He turned back to the exit, heart hammering. He needed to get out. He grabbed the door handle and yanked. It didn't budge. His breath hitched. Through the glass, something shifted. The reflection of the mall wasn't right. The storefronts looked further away, their signs blurred like a melting photograph. And something was standing at the information desk. A person. No, him. Sean spun to look. The information desk was empty. His pulse roared in his ears. The intercom crackled again. Attention all shoppers, the last guest must leave now. He ran. His footsteps slammed against the tile as he bolted toward the back exit near the food court. His flashlight beam bounced wildly off storefronts as he passed. The neon signs flickered, except they weren't the same stores. The signs had changed, different logos, some in languages he didn't recognize, some weren't even real. His lungs burned. The exit was ahead. He lunged for the handle. Locked. A reflection in the door. Sean, but not Sean. The mall, twisted and warped, stretched behind him in the glass, corridors snaking in impossible directions. The storefronts had shifted again, and there, standing at the information desk, his reflection moved. It stepped out of the glass. Sean whirled. Nothing there. He staggered back against the door, panting. Then, a rustle. He turned slowly. The mannequins from Levin's Fashion weren't in the store anymore. They were in the hall. Closer. They hadn't moved, but they were closer. Sean's grip tightened on the flashlight. He forced himself to step forward. The mannequins loomed. He swung the light over their plastic faces, blank. No eyes, no mouths, nothing but smooth, featureless heads. But they felt aware. A metallic screech from behind. The information desk. Something crawled over the counter. Sean stepped backward, his breath ragged. A shape pulled itself up, slow and deliberate. It wore his uniform, it had his face, but its mouth, too wide, too wrong. The thing grinned, and then it spoke. You should not be here, but you are, you were, and you will be. Sean turned and ran. The footsteps followed, faster than they should have. The food court stretched longer than before. His legs ached, the space warping around him. The walls bent inward. His radio crackled. Attention, all shoppers. The doors have been locked. The last guest must leave now. Sean gasped, shoving through a side hallway, a shortcut. It twisted in the wrong direction. The storefronts blurred into long corridors, stacked on themselves like an Escher painting. Something breathed behind him. He turned a corner, reaching the staff exit. There was no exit, just mirrors. Glass stretched across the walls, endless reflections of himself, warped and smudged. No door, no way out. His own face stared back, dozens of them. Then one reflection stepped forward. Not him, the other him. The mall had let him in, and now it would never let him leave. The lights snapped off. Darkness. Sean blinks. The lights are on. The mall is full of people. Shoppers drift past, chatting, browsing, oblivious. He stands behind the information desk. His uniform is crisp. His name tag reads Sean. His reflection smiles at him from the glass storefront across the hall. His radio crackles. The intercom buzzes. His voice, his own but not his, calmly announces, "Attention all shoppers. The doors have been locked. The last guest must leave now." And at the front doors, a new security guard turns in confusion. Sean watches, waits, smiles, because now he is part of the mall, and the mall is always hungry. The end. And that's the end. But the night is far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me, are you still awake? Or did the whispers follow you into your dreams? If sleep won't come just yet, there are plenty more stories waiting for you. Go on, pick another. I'll be here.